Hey guys, what's up?
What did you do to your teeth, Bob?
Oh, I had my teeth replaced with trimonite. What do you think?
There's a vulgar symmetry to it, a deadly graceful shape that draws the eyes to the mouth.
Yeah. What he said.
But you should still use a water pick.
Welcome to Crew Expendable. I am never going to be anyone's idea of a supermodel, but attractive enough, Hallstrom.
I am large man with large knife, Rohrbacher.
And I am you bitch Bob 8.
And we are tossing small metal balls in gentle underhand arcs towards the Alien franchise.
We sure are doing precisely that, yes.
Bob, welcome back again.
Hello, I'm here.
What up, dude?
Oh, not much.
Cool. Good work.
I was gonna say I'm all hopped up on cinema. I keep watching the trailer for the new Romulus. I'm excited about it. I just watched Despicable Me 4. It's best movie of the year. So I think this is going to be the year for the return of movies.
Movies are back, everyone. Despicable Me 4, Alien Romulus. The theater is back, the movie house.
Borderlands, Twisters.
That's
Borderlands, right. Everyone's the favorite, front runner for best picture of the year, right? Borderlands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've heard nothing but good things about it.
And it's a little bit old, but Bob's other favorite movie of the year, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, movies are back.
Yes,
that's right.
Finally. Bob, plug your stuff up top. Tell people what you do.
Hey, if you like, have you ever heard of video games?
What?
Yeah.
No, hold on. Start over. Video. I've heard of those two things separately.
See, I've heard of them, but that's because I'm tapped into underground culture in a way that Neil apparently isn't.
All right. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm so mainstream, guys. Jesus.
Well, hey, video games have come a long way since Pac-Man, and
hold on. Was Pac-Man?
That's correct. Yes.
I don't know. It's something from the 40s. I've never really played it, but I think it's like a suitcase or something.
I'll look it up in the Encyclopedia Britannica later.
Good call.
But if you like those kinds of things, I do a podcast with two other white guys with glasses, and we talk about them and other things that we are doing.
The Flock Podcast, is that it?
The Flock Podcast. You can visit it by going to workatmydadslawfirm.com.
Hell yeah.
That's the URL there. And I also do noise music sets on twitch.tv/respectable stream.
Yeah, if you're really into eye garbage. Just kidding. Your streams are always fun, Bob.
Well, hey, thank you. And if you're prone to seizures, maybe just listen to the audio versions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Nastyfairy.com for those, right?
Yeah, nastyfairy.com.
You think anyone's ever typed that URL in and gotten upset that it wasn't something else?
I don't know, because whenever GoDaddy hits me up to renew it, they tell me that I can sell it, and the price is always very low. So I don't think a lot of bids are going in for Nasty Fairy.
We got to drive traffic to nastyfairy.com so you can make a killing.
Hey, I don't know. This is probably not going to air before this Friday, but I got to finish online driving school, so I'm going to stream me doing the rest of my online driving school.
It is not going to air before Friday.
Okay.
Not only that, it's not going to air until after Romulus has dropped. So, hey guys, without spoilering anything, because Kenny and I have only seen the original teaser, the first teaser. What did you think of Romulus? Did you like it?
Yeah, we're going to be doing an episode about it when we go to see it. So it'll be fresh and brand new when we talk about it.
Yeah, but we're in the future right now. So I you know what? I think I loved it. I bet I loved it.
I think it was also pretty good. Yeah.
I'm raging an online war against it because it went woke and they gender swapped Alien, and now it's a king alien.
Dude,
what the hell?
Spoilers, I guess, for Romulus, even though it's been out for 2 weeks at this point. Yeah, I'm thinking it's gonna be pretty good. honestly.
Same.
But we'll see.
Same.
We'll see if I eat these words and have to do a drop-in recording of like, guys, we have another covenant on our hands.
What we should do is just record the episode being like, wow, the movie was so good. We loved it. Here's all the parts we liked. And then we do a drop-in recording of us adding the word not before every time we say something was good.
That's smart and efficient, Kenny.
That's right.
I mean, the Evil Dead, the Fede Alvarez Evil Dead was so fun. I can't imagine this is going to be too bad.
I fucking love that movie so much.
Yeah, and so we've talked about it on this show several times. I'm a huge fan of the Evil Dead movies, and like when they were teasing a remake starring Ashton Kutcher, I was like, please don't,
Yeah.
And then we got the Fede Alvarez one that does not have Ashton Kutcher in it, and I still went into that being like, I don't know, man, remake of one of my favorite horror movies. And then I watched it, and I was like, I couldn't get it off my mind for weeks afterwards. That movie fucking rules.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
We should do an episode on it. Why not? It's our show. We're already making people mad on YouTube by bullshitting for 20 minutes before we talk about Aliens Pig.
That's true.
And fuck it, we did an episode on an Elvira comic, right?
Yeah, but it was still alien related, dude.
It was. That's true.
Like Evil Dead doesn't have anything to do with Alien.
I bet there's some way. Hold on. No, I can't.
Hold on.
I can't track this in my head. I don't think. I would be like, okay, hold on. Army of Darkness crossed over with Danger. Nope, it's all dead ends. Wait, there's a Vampirella Army of Darkness crossover, and then Vampirella did the crossover with Aliens. So
Okay. I was going to say, Wayland Yutani bought S-Mart in 2247.
Sure.
Yeah, what if S-Mart bought out Wayland Yutani?
Now that's something we should riff on for 25 minutes and piss all of our YouTube fans off.
I don't know that we need to do that. Maybe we should just talk about Alien Sea of Sorrows, considering the three of us have been reading this book for like 4 months now.
We sure have.
I thought re-listening to the audio drama multiple times would help me remember it better, but all it has done is thrown the order that things happen wildly off.
Sure has. Yeah. Cool. I got to say, Bob, I'm a little disappointed you listen to the audio drama. I don't know if you know this, but the reason we started this show was Kenny came to me and he was like, hey, I have an idea. I've got this friend, Bob, and I'm really worried about him because he never reads books. And I really want to find a way to get him to get him to read books more. So what if we start a podcast about like a series where there's just a lot of books in it, and we drag Bob kicking and screaming?
Notice, listeners, that I'm not correcting him.
Look, as much as I want to sit down and read a book, the old brain is not tuned towards that speed of activity.
Sure. And
the bootleg audiobook version of this that is widely available on YouTube is done by AI, and it was unlistenable.
Sure. All right. Well, the audio dramas are good, but I particularly noticed I did both. I read the book and then I listened to the audio drama. I listened to about half of it this morning, the final half, to get back up to speed. Some major differences between the two. More so, I think, than in the previous two Dirk Maggs audio dramas for the other books in this series. We'll get into that more as we talk through this. But I think we should just jump into part 3 of our Alien Sea of Sorrows novel coverage, because I'm honestly ready to move on to that Alien Predator Terminator comic.
Same.
Yeah.
All right. So unless anyone else has anything else they'd like to say, for instance, who could tell me what happened in part 2?
Oh, I think I can.
All right. Because
I think I re-listened to all of that. All right. So just rewind to part 1 a little bit. There's this guy named Alan Decker who gets kidnapped by mercenaries and sort of convinced to go to New Galveston with them in order to clear his name and his debt, because he's a descendant of Ellen Ripley and has inherited all of her debt from blowing up the Sulaco and I think the LV-426, everything, the whole colony there.
I believe so, right. Yes.
And Wayland Yutani is like, hey, man, go down there because you have a weird brain connection with the xenomorphs, we think. And if you help us bring back a specimen, we'll clear your debt and your kids will be able to have lives, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So they go down to New Galveston, which we know from Alien Out of the Shadows, right?
Correct.
Trimonite mining city that's then all these years in the future been turned into a colony, and they're planning to do all of these like cities on it, right?
Yep.
But then they find the Trimonite mine and they're like, okay, fuck all that. Everything here sucks. We're just going to mine Trimonite. And then they find aliens and they're like, oh, there's aliens here.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes in with the mercenaries and then everyone finds aliens.
Yep.
And then the team gets split in two. He's with Manning and Adams and Silent Dave. And then there's another team of like Cho, the communications officer.
Yep. The radio team, as I refer to them as my notes.
Pitrowitz and Perkins and a scientist, part of the research team named Silas, I think.
Yep.
Yes.
And that side of the team picks up a lady whose name escapes me, who had a face hugger on them. And they're like, oh, I don't know what this is. Let's just stick her in the car. And then a teenage alien kills a whole bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we left off, I think.
Pretty much, yeah.
Can't believe I remember that much. And it's only because I listened to that section of the audio drama again.
It was about, 9 o'clock last night as of this recording. 9 p.m. last night, I was sitting down. I was like, all right, I gotta, read this last section. I hadn't even started reading it yet. And so I was like, I gotta read this last section because we're recording tomorrow. And then I was looking forward to playing a game on my Steam Deck after I was done. So I took like 5 minutes to install the game on my Steam Deck, and then I was going to get to reading. And during the 5 minutes I was goofing around on my Steam Deck, my dad walked by and he goes, oh, you're clearly not really doing anything. Want to watch a movie with me and your mom? And I felt bad about saying no. So instead of doing my reading, I instead rewatched Dune Part 1 with my parents last night.
Nice.
And so because that movie is long, it didn't end until like almost midnight. And so I was up until 3 a.m. this morning reading this section of the book because I knew that if I waited until this morning to do it, I wouldn't finish it in time. So I had to stay up to read it last night. So
yeah. I watched the movie last night too. Let's just get immediately off topic again.
Hell yeah.
I watched Bring It On.
Oh,
yes, dude.
And as always, fucking cried at the end.
I've never seen it, so
I have a weird connection to that movie.
Let's hear it.
If
if you want to share. I'm not putting you on the spot here.
And if you can make it take 20 minutes to get through, that'd be cool too.
So I run a recording studio.
Yeah.
Used to be a bigger part of my life. It used to be where I would spend basically all of my free time there.
Yeah.
I had a CRT TV there with a built-in VCR.
Mm-hmm.
Really showing our age here because you didn't call it a VHS player like the kids do these days.
But for a good maybe 3 years, it was the only thing in the studio that wasn't the the computer that I used to record on. So it was the only thing there. I had an N64, I think, but we never used it. And just to have something on visually in the background, the only VHS that I owned was Bring It On. And I would just, when I would get there, I would start the movie and let it play until it ended, then restart the movie. So for a good, probably 3 years, I watched that movie 3 times a day.
Cool.
With no sound on, just watching it.
There's 3 movies I could watch any day, no matter what, and it's Bring It On. Surprise! That's a new addition. I didn't realize that about myself until a couple months ago. Pitch Perfect, which is basically the same movie as Bring It On.
Yeah, and Hackers. I mean, good choices. I think to this day, I've still never seen Bring It On with the sound on.
You want to know something funny? I have not seen any of the 3 movies that Neil just listed.
Kenny, you're going to be the first guest on my Hackers podcast, Cast Override. This is a real thing I'm doing where every week I have someone come on the show and talk about Hackers.
I'll be honest. I kind of assumed that's what the premise of it was. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's not even like they made a sequel or anything. So what else are you going to talk about other than the one movie, you know?
Bob, I'm going to sign you up for that too.
Just call me Acid Burn.
Hey, let's get back on topic here.
Okay.
So we're covering, as far as the novel goes, chapters 34 through the epilogue, I think.
Correct.
There's 59.
Which technically is, I mean, it's chapter 60 or 61, depending on whether you want to consider the prologue technically the first chapter or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's 34 through 60, essentially.
Yeah, 59 numbered chapters, but some of them are like a page and a half long.
Yeah, they sure are.
And we're picking up right after the Sabrina the Teenage Xenomorph has wrecked Cho's crew a little bit. And we're cutting back to Decker and Manning's group.
Mm-hmm.
And right away, I'm frustrated by how much we're cutting between the two groups and how much those events overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure does.
But I can't in my head think of a better way to handle this, right? Like, but I understand like your DM's, frustrations when the group splits, because I had a really hard time like tracking and remembering who was in what group and just generally sort of being lost in the world.
It's a lot of similar stuff that they're doing too. They're like learning a lot of the alien life cycle stuff that we as the viewer already know. There's
definitely a segment of this where all three groups that the narrative cuts between learns at roughly the same time what a xenomorph's life cycle is. And I'm like, we as readers already know it. We don't need to be told it again once, much less 3 more times. Like, come on, dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine reading the basically fan fiction alien novel and not know anything about alien lore.
And there's like 78 named characters in this.
Yeah, I'm still really mad because, this is the second time I've read this book. I'm still actively upset with myself that I did not remember during this read through to go through and write down every single name said in the book.
Sure, but there's like 35 mercenaries.
There are.
Alan Decker. There's Andrea Rollins.
There's Willis.
There's Tom Willis.
Yeah.
I think he was in the Beach Boys.
All right, what are you talking about? Willis. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
The first edit. All right. And then who's the guy who betrayed Alan Decker, turned him in, like tipped the Rand off? Rand. That guy sucks. Also, I should say 20 something minutes into this recording that this book was written by James A. Moore. Okay.
All right.
Anyway.
So, our section starts off, we're with Manning and them.
Sure.
We're told that there is a total of 8 people with him, including him.
We've already lost a number of mercenaries and science technicians and whatever else.
Last time we saw them at the end of section 2, not chapter 2, but section 2 in the last episode, they were with a much larger group, but they got separated and had to tactically retreat, leaving everyone else behind.
That's right. And they've been making their way through one of these like silicon tubes that they found, right? Or they're just like working through some kind of xenomorph tunnel,
Yeah, they're going through the tunnels,
Okay. And I like that, is it Manning is tapping the walls to just like find out when there's a change in the, the material and the construction of these tunnels as like a way to predict when they like reach open land or something.
And he eventually does when it starts ringing hollow. So he blows a big hole in the wall, and then it takes the other side of the closed off wall. There is a huge mine shaft. Yes. And when they're in there, they finally are able to establish radio contact. And so they're like, okay, we know where to go. We have our bearings now. They start setting out, and then everyone gets knocked over when there is seemingly a big, huge earthquake that shakes the whole place.
Yeah, dude. This is portrayed really well in the audio drama, I think, right? This is pretty close to what happens in the novel. One thing is like Decker is picking up the hatred of the xenomorphs, right?
Hate rays.
He's the hate rays. That's right. He's getting his readings from them, and he's like, I know that they're close, but I don't know where they are. You know, versus the audio drama where he can like completely get inside their head and like hear their thoughts and everything.
Yeah, he's not really able to. Well, he's sort of like kind of able to do that once at the very end, but like other than that, he can't actually do that. Yeah,
it's kind of unclear what the boundaries of his powers are.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Especially in the audio drama, he gets power creep towards the end.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Especially, like not to spoil anything, but at the end when he can project things into other people's heads,
right? Which is wild. We should say as a refresher, Alan Decker is a descendant of Ripley, but not standard Ripley. He's a descendant of Ripley 8 from Alien Resurrection. Right.
So he has like, some kind of faint echo of her like psychic hive mind connection to them. He has like a drop of that, and that's why they're using him as kind of a dowsing rod to find them.
A dowsing rod or a lightning rod, right?
Well, that's also true because multiple times he's like, oh shit, the xenomorphs are actively ignoring other people to try to kill me specifically. Oh no.
Yeah. Which I'm just going to say, I fucking love that idea, right? Reading the book whenever they're having encounters with the Xenos, and you just hear like they're just fucking going for him. They're just like throwing themselves in the middle of like fire, like weapons fire and stuff, because they're just like singularly focused on killing this one man. Is a pretty terrifying concept, honestly.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder whether that's just an even more powerful and more overriding instinct, or if they're capable of thought in this way in a manner we didn't know of before,
Yeah.
Well, they do kind of touch on it in the audio drama, at least, when I don't remember the character's name, but when they're stuck to the walls in the little incubation chambers.
Yeah.
She's saying something about like the drones are just there to serve her. And so it kind of, they make it seem like, oh, they all of the drones don't really think for themselves. They're just like, if they have a command and then they just follow it to any end.
Yeah, it's sort of dependent on the environment. I think you're talking about the part where they stumble into a hive.
I think so. I don't remember when it happens. I just remember that sticking out as like, oh, that's why they are putting themselves in danger just to kill Decker.
Well, he's the destroyer,
He sure is.
These xenomorphs remember. They remember original recipe Ellen Ripley going into their hive, back all the way back in out of the shadows. But they can't tell the difference between that Ripley and the blood that's in Decker, right?
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, the smell is the same, right, guys? Yeah. Let's talk more about this way things smell in this novel.
I think I'm good, actually.
Okay. All right, let's keep moving.
All right. We cut over to what I've been referring to as Radio Team, which is like Cho and Piotrowicz and all them. And first things first, we're introduced to a new character by being told that she is not particularly attractive. Extremely rude.
Yeah, that's where my intro came from.
Yeah, we're introduced to a character, Anderson, by being told she's no model. And it's like, all right, man. Wasn't wondering, but all right.
But we do know she hooked up with one of the guys on the team on occasion, right?
Yeah.
Look,
that's what we're told anyway.
I'm torn about this stuff, and I think I've talked about it on the last episode, and maybe I'm saying something different than I did then, where it's a little bit like, are these people really thinking about like who and what they fucked on this mission? But then also it's like, okay, but this is also the only like fleshing out of their characters we get aside from them reacting to the crisis that they're in.
I believe it's Perkins that says that about her. Yeah. And that's like, as far as I can recall, one of the only things we ever even really like find out about Perkins.
Right. But then also it's like they got to have a hobby or something, right? Like
Maybe that is their hobby.
Like why isn't Anderson or Perkins, whoever, being like, man, I really wish I had time to finish that quilt before we got sent on this mission, you know?
I mean, they are mercenaries. I guess they don't. It is just a day at the office for them, so maybe they are more worried about extracurricular activities than.
That's fair. I'm gonna let it go. It was just again a thing where I'm like, I got nothing else to. Like we don't get any other characterization outside of this sort of surface level stuff. But hey, whatever. You know.
Well, I mean, that's what happens when you have like 45 named characters in a novel, I guess.
That's fair. But I feel like I would, I don't know. Maybe I would. Maybe if I were stuck in a trimonite mine, like 8 floors, like below surface level with bugs chasing me, I'd be thinking about getting it wet one more time. I don't know.
Well, you also got to remember, man, I mean, this is someone that they did hook up with. It's not like they're going to forget that happened. They might not be actively thinking about it. That might just be something where, like, when you see that person, you're like, oh, and also as a side note, I did hook up with them.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessarily implausible, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess this is just me bringing my own weird baggage to the podcast, and I can knock that off.
But yeah, anyway, like I said, the first thing we ever find out about Anderson is that she's, quote, no model. That's also pretty much the only thing we ever really find out about her. Perkins goes off to find Willis, who's like the company stooge that's in the mines with them, and suddenly gets knocked to the ground by a series of explosions.
Yeah.
That, side note, is the same thing as the earthquake from last chapter.
I did like that. You know, how that wove into the 2 chapters and the 2 groups.
Yeah. And then he calls the radio squad and they said, "What you talking about, Willis?"
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's exactly what happens. Yes. Yep. If you recall, they got their hands on a truck in the last section of the book.
Right. A cyber truck.
So they all pile into the truck and drive off to see where those explosions came from, and they end up running into the scientist that Neil, you mentioned earlier, Silas,
sure,
who just blew up the exit with grenades and collapsed it and blew up the elevator in the process. So Cho goes, "What the fuck?" and pulls out his gun and shoots Silas in the head, killing him.
Yeah, this is he blows up the lift, right? They can't get out of the mine now because the lift has been, at least not easily, because the lift has been busted.
Yeah, they can't use it at all. And Silas straight up says that it's because he discovered that there's like so many xenomorphs down there that if any of us are infected, even one of us, it'll get out and spread forever, or spread everywhere forever. Yeah. And I've decided I can't allow that. So he blows up the only way out.
Yeah, his fear and his paranoia has taken over. And he's like, none of us can get out of here. We're all at risk of exposing the surface to this, and we can't like leave an exit for those things to get out either, right? But in the audio drama, there's a different detail about him. Do you remember this, Bob?
He shoots himself.
Yeah, why does he shoot himself?
He had a tummy ache, I think, and he wasn't feeling too good.
Yes.
He had one of those spider creatures on his face prior to that.
Yeah. In the audio drama, he's going on about like, because they're like, none of us have been infected. And he's like, no one that you know about, but I have.
Yeah. Saw that coming.
I didn't like this. I didn't like this change.
Yeah.
It was, I like in the book, we've been spending so much time with these mercenaries, right? Mm-hmm. And like these mercenaries who captured our main protagonist and then, dragged him on this death mission, right? And like at this point, we've kind of like grown to sort of, I don't know, they've been the characters we've been following. So we've got some kind of an attachment to them, similar to how we got an attachment to the troops in Aliens, right? And then this was a nice reminder while reading that like, oh, wait, no, these are still fucking mercenaries. And this guy just ruined their escape plan and they just offed him,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the audio drama, it's reversed a little bit, where like this scientist, this part of the research crew that's been tagging along that helped them find this alien city and told them that he's pretty sure that the alien city was wiped out by the xenomorphs, blah, blah, blah. He's just been like the infected guy who hasn't told the rest of the party and takes his own life instead of showing like how cold-blooded these mercenaries are.
And also they do that again later too. So
right.
I felt weird that they repeated it and that, you know, it was better like character, like showing the mercenaries in the book.
Yes. Yeah, it was a change I wasn't really thrilled with because, you know, one thing the audio drama did overall was sort of turn some of the mercenaries into heroes. And I guess there's something to that of showing like, oh, they're not all villains, right? But that's less interesting to me for whatever reason. I don't know.
I hear you.
Anyway, yeah, dude blew up the lift, right? Everyone's fucked. Cho offs him execution style.
Correct. Silas blows up the lift. Cho gets really mad. And then in my notes, I literally wrote, Cho shoots him directly in the brain, which leads me to believe that there's some part of the narrative that specifically describes the bullet like going into his head and caving part of his brainstem in or whatever. Like, I'm assuming there's a reason why I added that specific language rather than just saying he shot him.
Extreme prejudice, right?
And
he
then
spits on the fucking body too.
He does. I did not write that in my notes, but now that you mention it, yes, he does do that. That's correct.
He says, "You fucking idiot! You didn't save anyone." Then he spits on him.
And then from there, we cut back to the surface and we we meet up with Luke Rand, who, to remind everyone, is the guy that sold out Decker in part 1 of the book.
Right. I don't remember him at all from the audio drama.
He doesn't appear other than being the guy that Decker fingered.
Okay.
Fair enough.
I think that's the only references in the audio drama.
And he spits on his body.
Well, it's fine. I mean, this chapter ends with him getting killed by a xenomorph, so it's fine. He doesn't really contribute anything meaningfully here anyway. Right. We cut back to him. We get a couple of pages of what I described in my notes as, quote, some woe is me bullshit, because he's talking about like how he's like, oh, I feel so bad about what happened to Decker, and like I really shouldn't have sold him out and all that, but like now that he's here and he looks so bad and they've obviously treated him so poorly, and I'm like, bro, you are not allowed to feel bad about what has happened to him when you are the reason that these things have happened to him. All you had to fucking say was nothing and he would have been fine.
Yeah, but he's gonna get rich off of this, right?
While he's thinking all of this to himself, he sees some movement coming out of the sea, the Sea of Sorrows.
One of several scenes in the book where he's like, there's some people out there. Wait, those aren't people.
He sees some movement. He gets on his radio and calls into a nearby security guard, and two guesses what it is he sees out in the sea, and that second guess that you're not going to need, you can use that to guess what happens to Rand after he sees the thing.
Hold on, two guesses. I'm going to guess an engineer and a deacon.
That is extremely correct. That's precisely what happens. Yes.
Plot twist, guys. This is Prometheus now.
And then the next chapter is the exact same thing as that chapter, except the main character of the chapter is the security guard that Rand called. Mm-hmm. And it's also like a page and a half long. The security guard's like, this fat guy probably got really drunk and passed out again. I guess I'll go check and see what happens. And then he walks out there and he gets killed by a xenomorph. And I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, thanks.
I should say my alternate intro. My alternate designation was going to be man who, unless I'm pissing blood, something nasty has happened to me, Hallstrom.
Yeah, Bob, that is a piece of narrative they use during one of the various moments that characters are looking out over the Sea of Sorrows. They see like a blotch of water, or they look out and they see some water and they're like, huh, what's that? And they see something. And in this case, it's water. He thinks, oh, yeah, that guy must have been piss and blood, or maybe something worse. And then he shines his flashlight on it and sees that it's actual blood. And he goes, oh, no. And then he gets killed by a xenomorph.
Just to show respect for the dead, his name was Brett Bentley.
It sure was.
Brentley.
Got him. After that, we cut back underground to Manning and Decker and Co. And they are currently stuck on level 5. And since their comms are still working at this time, Cho informs them about what happened between him and Silas and what those earthquakes were. And Decker gets his hands on some night vision goggles. And of course, I'm picturing them as looking exactly like the ones from Jurassic Park.
Nice. I pictured Splinter Cell.
That's the other option, yes.
What night vision goggles did you picture, Bob?
I picture some futuristic ones that kind of look like the Apple Vision Pro.
Okay.
But of course, they are painted digital camo.
Of course.
Right. Of course they are. Yeah. So I think, they're on level 5 and Cho and his gang are on level 8, I think.
I believe so, yeah.
This is a common problem I have with these books where, and this honestly might be because we read it on such a long timeline. I have trouble keeping up with the geography of everything.
Mm-hmm. I got problems with it.
Yeah.
Also.
Yes.
All right.
They are, as previously stated, thousands of feet below the surface of the planet.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're only at levels 3 through 8.
I guess, yeah.
I
think big levels, right?
I think they say something at one point in one of the previous sections. I think they said the mine goes down roughly about 2 miles below the surface, all told.
Okay. So these are pretty massive levels.
Where do the levels start and stop, though, is what I'm asking. Because if they're at 8 and they're that far below.
There is a ground floor, and then they go down, like the floors go down as the numbers go up. So as you get deeper in the mine, the floor numbers get higher. So there's ground level, and then first floor, and then the lowest floor that there is level 9.
Okay. I was going to ask, do you think they skipped level 13 like they do in Skyscrapers?
Yeah, there's technically 10 levels because there's a section later on in the book where a group of people is on level 1, and I'm like, oh, so they're like out. And like a big part of the narrative of that chapter is how they're not out because they still have to make it up to the ground floor, which is where the actual entrance of the mine is. And I was like, oh, so there's 10 floors, not 9. Got it. Gotcha. And one of them is just ground floor, you know.
And the Drukathy, right? I always want to say the Game of Thrones thing instead.
Yeah.
That city was at the bottom.
I think so.
Or was it lower than level 9? I can't remember.
Well, there isn't a floor. There isn't a level lower than 9 as far as the mines are concerned. Mm-hmm. So if it's on the bottom, then it's on level 9.
Okay. So that's where the derelict ship is. That's where the xenomorph, one of the xenomorph hives is, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the dog aliens got massacred.
But yeah, like I said, he finds some night vision goggles. I believe he gets a pair from somebody, maybe Adams, maybe somebody else. I don't remember. Yeah. Then his hate ray starts going off and he senses a huge approaching swarm from all around them. Mm-hmm. So they decide to head out, and almost immediately after heading out, they get ambushed by a whole bunch of xenomorphs, and a guy who's only ever named dark-haired guy gets killed by a xenomorph.
We're learning there's so many more people here than we've ever talked about before. So like a couple chapters ago in Cho's group, we're introduced to someone named Rosemont. I don't think I've read that name in this book prior to chapter 35.
I think that might be where they're introduced. So
yeah.
But Yeah, let's see. They kill a few Xenos. They go on the run again. And there's a very brief little stupid aside that made me laugh that I want to add here. This section of the chapter ends with a specific passage that says, "So they ran. Oh, they ran." And the nightmares followed.
And the nightmares
followed. Now, I would like to cite to you guys the lyrics to a Metallica song, if you don't mind.
I got more music trivia for later, but go for it.
Seething, breathing, nightmares grow. On I run, still my shadows follow. That is from the song Shadows Follow, the second track on their 2023 album 72 Seasons. Plagiarism?
Look, I would never accuse Metallica of doing shitty stuff, so I don't know if I can go that far.
I legit, I saw the line and the nightmares followed, and I was like, there is a Metallica song that has almost that exact same line in it, but I couldn't immediately remember what song it was. It took me a minute or two, and then I was like, oh, that song came out after this book did. Wow, that's wild.
Hey, Kenny, what a side question here. What's it like being the only person who has listened to the Metallica album released in 2023?
Not only am I the only person that's listened to it, not only did I get it day one, but I pre-ordered that motherfucker the day they announced it. They announced it like 4 months before it came out, and I got it day of.
Jeez. Did you get like a t-shirt with the pre-order or anything?
I could have, but I did not order that set. Like, you could buy like, you know, the CD, or like the CD and a t-shirt, or like the CD and a vinyl, or like, you know, the vinyl and the CD and a t-shirt and a poster. And like, they had a whole bunch of like different pre-order sets, but I just got the one that was just the CD. So
I have pre-ordered one album in my life, and it was Raekwon's Shaolin vs. Wu-Tang album. And I got a free t-shirt.
Strange pull for that.
Not as good as Cuban Links or Cuban Links 2, which I think is better than Cuban Links 1.
I own a physical copy of every single Metallica album. They are one of only 2 bands that I own a hard copy of all of their albums of. So
nice.
I don't own physical albums from any bands.
Oh, they're like them and Chevelle are the only 2 bands I still buy their albums of. Everywhere else, I just stream or pirate it. Just only those 2. So,
Bob, you don't like mixing work with pleasure, do you?
I just don't like owning things.
Sure.
I think.
I think I bought 3. I bought so in the past few years, I bought 3 albums on vinyl. That's the only physical music media I've bought. One of them was I bought it at Criminal Records in Atlanta, Georgia, in Little 5 Points. It's the Mortal Kombat the album on translucent orange vinyl.
Of course it is.
Yeah, I bought the first MF Doom Czarface meets Metalface album, and I bought my friend Ryan's band Rudderkin their album on vinyl.
Yeah.
Which is a solid album. Go listen to Rudderkin on, I guess, Spotify. I don't know where, you know. They have a Bandcamp. Go there.
That's right.
I record a lot of records, and whenever the bands are like, "Hey, do you want us to send you a copy?" I'm always like, "No, thanks. It's just gonna go in the attic or something. Like I don't even own a record player."
Yeah, I actually don't really anymore either. But that didn't stop me from buying these things.
It's the kind of thing where I got like 2 in my head about it, and I was like, oh, if I'm gonna get a record player, I need to have like a nice record player, and I need a good preamp for it. You need just like that starts adding up so much. I'm like, I'm not going to spend $4,000 on a hi-fi setup.
That is the same thing that is stopping me. So I get it.
Like I said, as we left off, they ran and the nightmares followed. As they're running down the tunnel, they go around like an elbow bend in the tunnel. And Decker basically goes, you know what? Fuck this. And pulls out his plasma rifle and flips on the full auto switch. And then as the xenomorphs start to run around the tunnel, he just goes and goes Rambo mode and just unloads. They say in the novel literally 100 rounds from this plasma rifle just directly into the entire oncoming horde of Xenos, which kills all of them with, as you said earlier, extreme prejudice, but it also creates so much heat that it literally melts the stone of the tunnel, and they have to flee because it starts getting so hot they can't survive in the tunnel anymore.
Is that how they explain it in the book?
Yeah, there's differences here. How do they handle this in the audio drama, if you remember?
In the audio drama, I believe they set it up in a way where the plasma rifle has like a dangerous mode, basically, where it does it charges up and then and fires
just a big old ball.
Yeah, just a huge.
Yeah, you hold down blast. L2 to charge your shot before you fire it. I got you.
Right, and if you hold it too long, then it can hurt everyone around you.
Yeah.
There's a charge shot similar to Fire Team Elite, but much more dangerous.
Yeah, so he basically does that, and that it's not like he unloads the full magazine. He just does one big AOE effect on the room.
I got you.
Okay, so real quick, Bob, how do the mercenaries with him treat him after he does that?
They are high-fiving him, saying, "Oh, holy crap, you're so crazy! What? Yes. How are you not blind from the flash of light?" And he says, "I closed my eyes." And they said, "Oh, you're fucking wild, dude."
Yeah. In the book, they were still in a tight corridor when he did this, right?
Yep.
And it describes them as the aliens were gone, just gone. And every mercenary with him are like, "You fucking dumbass. You know, I can't believe you did that. We never do that because it is so phenomenally dangerous. You did this in a tight corridor. All of this stone is now burning. You just dropped a miniature sun's worth of heat down a hallway made of stone and dirt. If we're fucking lucky, the entire thing won't collapse, you dumb bastard." That's a direct line from the book.
Damn. Yeah, that's Manning, yeah.
And Adams is like, "It's my fault. I shouldn't have given him the fucking plasma rifle, and I told him never to switch to that mode."
And then Decker's like, "Absolutely not, Adams. Shut the fuck up. This was entirely on me." And Manning's like, "Yeah, goddamn right it is." And then takes the gun from him.
Yeah. Plasma rifles tend to heat things up, idiot. Then they all climb on a lift, like an extra supply lift, and start slowly moving up.
And then after that, that's where the chapter ends. And then we cut to my favorite character, Rollins.
Andrea Rollins, right?
Very little happens pretty much every single time Rollins shows up. Basically, all that happens in here is she says she's going to send down a ship to pick everyone up. And after she does that, she sends an email to one of the higher ups at Wayu, basically telling them their plan is going almost as planned, but a couple little hiccups here and there that have been solved and papered over, but everything's going basically okay. And then afterwards she kind of just thinks to herself about how we could very easily save the people as well as saving the data, but if we save the people, there's like a 1% lower chance that we might be able to save the data, so saving the people isn't worth it. And I'm like, cool, thanks.
Yeah, the email address is in here.
It sure is.
They are clickable links if you read the Kindle version.
Oh, nice.
So I am currently drafting an email to lbannister@waylandutani.com.
Can you CC me on that also?
Yeah, just put your email in the chat.
Okay.
Or you could just say it out loud right here on the episode. Then after that, we cut to yet another group of people. So this is the fourth different storyline we're following.
There's a lot of them. What should I say in this email?
Although I think this chapter is the only time we see this group of people, so ultimately it's fine. we're with a group of people that are at the what's referred to as the Quonset or the Quonset hut, and turns out these people are just like workers in the mine, and they're on a higher. I don't know if they're on level 4 or they're just on a higher level than where the explosion was, but I think they're on level 4, and like there's a little bit of narrative about how they were trying to like either load or unload the mining equipment when suddenly out of nowhere the fucking elevator exploded. And so they're all like, huh? So they send some people, down to like rappel on ropes down to see what happened. 4 of them go down. And then all of the sudden, all 4 rappelling lines go slack and are empty and have nothing on the end of them. And we're seeing all this through the viewpoint of a character named Moretti, who then immediately gets killed by a xenomorph. And then a whole swarm of xenomorphs show up and kill every single person in this chapter. And we never see any of them again.
Yeah, this was fun. I like the way it's described as like they're rappelling down and then all of the lines go taut and then slacked. And you just know like they've all 4 have been grabbed by xenomorphs. It's very sick. Chapter, honestly. Also, I wrote to Al Bannister at Wayland-Yutani, subject line, hey, and body, you up?
Good work.
So we'll see if we get a response back.
There's another brief aside where we cut back to Rollins, who sends yet another email where the contents are like 85% the same as the previous one. And that's the only thing that happens. So we cut back to Radio Team.
Hold on.
Which is
Andrea Rollins was like, Lorne, get in the space van.
Oh, boy.
Thank you.
All right.
But yeah, we cut back to Cho and the rest of them. There's a fire in the mine shaft, and they argue for like a page or two about whether they want to leave this area or not, because they're in the area I believe this is back to the area that they started, like where Manning told them to stay and guard.
Yeah.
So they have a discussion for a page or two going back and forth about whether they want to leave or not.
Right.
And during this argument,
thinking about going down the tubes, right? The silicon tubes, or climbing up them.
Just heading out in general.
Yeah.
Maybe I think they briefly discuss going into the tubes, but then somebody's like, but isn't that where those monsters came out from? And they're like, oh yeah. Well, the monsters are kind of coming out from everywhere, though.
Right.
And during this conversation, they also find out that this fire they're dealing with that's burning up everything and causing the whole area to fill up with smoke. Somebody notices that the fire is runoff from ammo used in a plasma rifle. So this fire was specifically started by Decker going crazy guy mode with that rifle a couple of chapters ago.
Yeah, again, I do like the way the two things sort of affect each other.
So they ultimately decide to head out, though, because they're like, we could get killed by xenomorphs out there, but if we stay here, we will die from either the fire or the smoke. So they pack up anyway and get attacked by xenomorphs, wouldn't you know it? And Perkins and Piotrowicz both get killed by xenos during this fight.
They don't get killed, they get captured.
Well, here's the thing. There's like 4 or 5 different times in this book where the novel specifically describes a character as getting descended upon by a xenomorph. And so I'm like, oh, RIP them. And then I write in my notes that they're dead. And then like 15 chapters later, it cuts back to them and they wake up and they're resined in a wall. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm removing that RIP that I wrote earlier.
I guess I would describe it more as Darkness ate Perkins' entire world. And boy, does she hate the dark. This is something we're going to have to come back to because their fate has a different role in the audio drama than in the novel.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm pretty sure they do show up again later, regardless. So.
We'll put a pin in that.
They also say some stuff about that in the audio drama that I questioned.
All right.
I'm interested in hearing because.
Oh, just they make note of. They are when they are captured for incubation.
Yeah.
they are sedated with the saliva of the xenomorph.
Okay. Yeah. And then
And that struck me as something I hadn't seen in any other media before.
I think that also happens in the novel.
I know in the novel we get a nice long description of the xenomorphs like puking resin onto somebody that they've captured.
Well, I wouldn't call it long, but that does happen in the book. Yes.
It felt long.
It was one sentence, dog.
A lot of spit in this novel.
But is the spit, is that specifically sedating them, or are they just using that as like a binder?
Yeah, in the what I remember is being used as like a binding.
Yeah, like
agent,
what he's referencing is we see a scene later on of after someone had gotten captured. We see the xenomorphs coating them with resin, and the way they do that is by barfing it up on them.
Hey, spit freaks out there! I got a novel for you. Alien Sea of Sorrows. Spitting on corpses, aliens spitting on people, sedating them, right?
But yeah, I think there is a brief reference in.
I want to talk. Hold on, I want to talk more about this.
I think there is a brief reference in this novel to like the slime that they're always drooling.
Yeah.
I think at one point it does knock somebody out or sedate them or however it is you want to describe it. I think it does have some kind of biological effect on them, and yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that anywhere else. So
I haven't either, but if it's out there, if this is common knowledge, look, anyone who's listened to this show knows that we're not experts on any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm trying to imagine how that would even work, though, if you really think about it.
Yeah. Well, if you got detailed information or, I don't know, fan fiction, mother@crewexpendable.net.
How would the biology of the Drukathi and a human being work the same way to be sedated by the alien spit?
That's interesting. It's an interesting point. Any pharmacists out there, let us know. We'll get the info to Bob.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He clearly wants to know, so we'll forward everything to him.
Just him, not also me.
That's correct. Not also Neil, only Bob.
Mm-hmm.
So
I want to know too.
I gathered, don't worry. We cut back to Decker and Manning and them, and Decker is in the process of having another panic attack when the elevator stops. The reason, though, the elevator stops, it stops prematurely. It does not take them to their destination. So they have to go out the top, like through the roof of the elevator, and climb up the elevator cables to escape.
Yeah.
And they make it to the next level, open the door, and then when they do, they find out they are on level 2 now.
I liked this. I generally like the way they talk about Decker and his visions and stuff in the novel, right? He's real unsure of it, and everyone's like, come on, give us more information. And he's like, it doesn't work that way, guys. It doesn't fucking work that way. It's just a feeling in my head. At some point, they give him a more of a sedative, but I don't know if that's quite here yet. But what I also like is that, he's really focused on the fact that he's the target, and he keeps telling them that. And none of them are like, well, let's just fucking leave him here, because they're relying on him as like their radar,
Yeah, for sure.
Like at this point, you think these cold-blooded mercenaries will be like, all right, well, you go that way, and we're going to go this way.
That's right.
I also like when Manning goes up and he's got to climb the cable, and he's like, all right, guys, you guys are going to need gloves. This is a really razor thin cable. And Decker's like, I don't have any gloves. And then 2 grease coated gloves dropped on his face.
Yep.
I like that.
Manning's just like, it just tosses him down and whap right on the face.
Yeah. This is also when we get our first reminder in a while, I think, that the gravity here on New Galveston is lower than
it is, yes,
than Earth, I guess.
Yeah, because part of it while he's climbing up the cable, he's like, man, my arms are already tired from the strain. Just imagine how much worse it would be if gravity were the same here, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, they make it up to level 2. They open up the door, and it opens up into a still actively being used mining chamber. I mean, it's not literally being used right at that moment, because there's nobody around, because as it turns out, they find dozens of bodies. Most of them are dead, trapped in the resin, but like people were still mining here on this level in this chamber before everything happened.
Yeah.
Like, because they like the mine started at the bottom and they would clear everything out level by level. And now they've gotten up to the point where they're still like the part of the mine that's still being worked in.
Right. But it's become a hive.
Mm-hmm.
We learned this. It's the newest hive, but it ain't the only one.
Sure is. Sure isn't, I should say.
Sure is not.
And yeah, like I said, there's a whole bunch of bodies, dozens of them. Most of them are just corpses, though, trapped in the resin all over. And then Decker, I thought he had already figured this out, but I guess it was a different character because Decker pieces together how the life cycle of a xenomorph works. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, man, we know.
Yeah, this group, I don't think has seen the full life cycle yet. Cho's group did with unnamed. I mean, she's named, but I don't remember it. The lady in the truck who got chest bursted.
Yeah.
Right. So like Cho and his gang have figured it out. But this is where Manning's group is like, yeah, Cho said that that they implant their babies inside the people. So It was just a side note. I like that they pair up the group with people with a ranged weapon paired with a bludgeoning or a close combat weapon. Mm-hmm. Just an interesting detail. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was a sound tactical decision.
It is. I just like that the book spent some time on it. Like I like when we're shown that the whatever military force has some competence. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. I mean, I don't care for that much in real life, but when you're fighting xenomorphs, that's all. I got nothing else.
Okay.
This will be a solid editing point.
I thought you were going to finish that sentence, but apparently not.
Well, it turns out I said everything I had to say on the subject. I just like that detail of the novel of showing them like form strategy on how to deal with this situation. Because like we've seen that work effectively in their other like conflicts with the xenomorph where the things move in close fast because again they're all sort of honed in on Decker. So melee weapons play like a major part in all of the combat in this book. So they figured it out. In almost every single fight, a xenomorph's getting kicked or punched or prodded or batoned in the face or chest.
And also importantly, they're trying to capture one alive.
Right.
Also correct. Yes.
Yeah, because they still want to get their like fat payday.
But yeah, like I said, they discovered the walls of this place are covered in people, but then they discover that the walls of this place are also covered in xenomorphs who swarm out from all over the place and attack them. So they form like a moving shield wall, kinda, and they're making their way towards the one tunnel they can see. And every time they start to get swarmed, somebody pulls out a gun and shoots one of the bodies trapped in resin, dude. One of the ones that are still alive, because it makes a bunch of the xenomorphs go ack and run over there to guard the young. Yeah, and so every time they start getting swarmed, somebody just goes pow, and then all the xenomorphs run over there, and then the path is open enough for them to get a little farther, and then they do it again, and then do it again, and it keeps going on like that for a few different times.
They do say ack, and we call that pulling a Kathy.
That's correct. And also,
I don't know if this was in the audio drama because this doesn't sound familiar at all.
So this general hive situation is handled differently in the audio drama. It's not as expanded on, and Decker's behavior in it is quite a bit different.
Also, as a very brief side note, Bridges gets killed during this fight.
Yeah, quick question for you guys. Who the fuck is Bridges?
He's one of the guys that's there. That's pretty much all we know about him.
I have the name highlighted, and I highlighted names that I didn't recognize. So,
but yeah. Anyway, how is this fight scene handled in the drama?
I don't recall it happening
at all.
So, like none of this sounds familiar to me.
This is where they find. I'll just jump ahead because we have to. They skip right ahead to the Queen.
Oh, what the heck? That was my next big reveal.
Oh, spoiler alert.
Okay.
So yeah, basically after this fight scene, they manage to get through the tunnel. They run through some corridors and into another chamber, and they meet ... because that's how that chapter ends.
Guys, forget I said anything about a queen. Go on.
And then the next chapter starts with ... the Queen.
Oh, I did not see that coming.
And in case you're wondering, she is described as being huge and gross.
Spider-like.
And then right as everyone's like, ew, yuck, bleh, a whole bunch of ovomorphs open up, and then they get attacked by a swarm of facehuggers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all of that leading into the hive and leading into the queen was sort of brushed over in the audio drama, and it's kind of skipped right to this point.
All right.
I just want to touch on before we move on. I like the idea. I like that the mercenaries realized that all of the xenomorphs, all of the drones, whatever was in here, are going to rush to protect the young and protect the breeders, as they call them, right? It's so despite their hatred and like disgust for Decker and their urge to kill, the Deathbringer or whatever they call him.
Yeah, Destroyer.
The Destroyer. There we go. They are still like, what we have to ensure the survival of the colony, though. That's all. That's going to play more of a part in this next section. But I like that. That's why they weren't swarming the group. That's why they weren't like just beelining for Decker. It's because
that's why when they would shoot one of the people in the wall, that's why that tactic worked, because they had two different instincts pulling at each other: kill the Destroyer and guard the young. And so every time they shot one of the people in the wall, they were like, we need to protect the rest of them, and they'd run over there, leaving the path available for them to escape.
Yeah, exactly. But let's talk about the mother of spiders. Also a nice reminder that because Decker didn't have an image of the xenomorphs when he was having these nightmares, at the beginning of the novel, right? He was just filling in the blanks with spiders, something he knew and his mind recognized.
And he is very dismayed to find out when the huggers show up that he isn't actually that far off after all.
Yes.
But yeah, like I said, or like I mentioned, the queen's a huge gross freak, and everyone's like, yuck. And while most of the remaining mercs are fighting the face huggers, Decker manages to very briefly get his hand on the plasma rifle again, and basically just starts attacking the queen with like concentrated direct fire. And the queen's like, ow, ow, stop it, you jerk, ow, ow, this sucks, ow. And then everyone else goes, hey, that actually works. And then all of them start directing their fire onto the queen, and the queen's like, and then she blows up.
She's like, like a Sunday Kathy comic strip.
And then she fucking dies. I believe they describe her skull as splitting in half in the narration. And the xenomorphs get extremely pissed.
That's that skull with vulgar symmetry to it, a deadly graceful shape that draws the eyes towards the mouth.
And so the chapter ends with all the xenomorphs going, oh no, my queen, and then deciding to attack the group. But then the next chapter is another chapter from the xenomorph's perspective, and we find out that the cliffhanger at the end of the previous chapter on the last page was a fucking lie, because they are not, we have to kill these guys. Some of them are like, we have to kill these guys, and the other ones are like, we need to grab these eggs and escape so that we can start another hive somewhere else, because that's the only thing that matters.
Yes. Before we move on, this whole scene, this whole queen face-off was different in the audio drama.
I remember it being very anticlimactic.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons, mostly because they really do a lot of setting the scene for what the queen's chamber looks like and like describing the queen. But it's still like, I mean, obviously we know what all of this is. We know what it looks like.
Right.
It's just kind of like burning up time.
It's the queen as we saw it in Aliens with the big legs in the egg sac and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the big difference is that in the audio drama, Decker is like frozen and can't do anything because the queen is like in his brain.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's not the one who's like attacking the queen and like getting everyone to like focus their fire on her,
Yeah. All right.
It's him being like frozen and like his brain being controlled by like the overwhelming force of this hive mind.
I got you.
The one thing the audio drama does is just, and I may have already said this, just crank his connection with the xenomorphs up to 11. And the closer to proximity he is with them or with, a queen or a hive mind, like the more he can't control himself and the more like vulnerable he is to their thoughts.
Is this also a part where he kind of realizes that they set him up, the queen, like they kind of tricked him into going there so they could be ambushed?
That does sound familiar to me. I think so. That's not how it works in the novel.
Okay.
Yeah, that revelation does not happen in the book.
Yeah.
Okay. It's something like that where it's like he realizes that the communication thing is like a two-way street, and
Yes.
he wasn't using it as like radar. Basically, it was more of they were luring him to that place so they could kill him.
I think you're right about that. The audio drama like really focuses on this connection being two ways. The novel never really makes it two ways, except when he's in the presence of the queen. He gets these flashes in his head of Ellen Ripley, but
He
it's
sure
like,
does.
but she's like distorted and weird, and it's as if he's seeing her the way that the xenomorphs see her, right?
Yeah, and there's one moment at the very end where it seems like the two of them, the two of them being Decker and the Hive as a whole, it seems like they're vaguely sort of, if not necessarily communicating with each other, at least understanding each other.
Yes.
And those are literally the only two moments in the book where it even implies the connection can go both ways.
Right. Another important thing that happens in this section is that Adams gets face hugged, and so does someone else whose name escapes me.
She sure does.
Yeah, there isn't. We'll get the name in a little bit, I'm sure, of the other person.
Then we cut back to after, we get the brief aside of the Xenos fleeing with the eggs to start another hive.
Mm-hmm.
We cut to, if anyone remembers, Pritchett. He's the pilot that landed them on the planet in the first place in part 1, and then in part 2 got chewed out by Rollins for pretending there was turbulence.
Yes.
She calls him into his office and basically tells him that he is going to take the ship down and land to go pick up any remaining survivors. Right. And he's definitely going to do it by the book. And he's like, "You got it, boss."
I liked this. I liked that he was like, "Oh yeah." He checked the atmosphere and the weather conditions and just did everything by the book because he knew that Rollins was watching him. Mm-hmm. He was sent down there because she got that communication from Willis, right? Willis is the only person on this planet with a direct line to her.
That is correct.
Because he's a Weyland-Yutani stooge.
He sure is.
Yeah. So Pritchett has made it down to the planet.
And then we cut back to the key members of radio team, Cho, Piotrowicz, and Perkins. This is when we find out they didn't get killed because, again, I want to specify, last time we saw them, the narrative implies the xenomorph was killing them, not taking them away.
Right.
So we find out they're still alive when this chapter starts and they're talking to each other, and we all go, "Oh, so they didn't get killed earlier." And again, to reiterate what I said, that happens like 5 different times over the course of this book. He keeps reusing that narrative device over and over again. But anyway, they have a fun little conversation about how they are madly, platonically in love with each other. That would be Piotrowicz and Perkins.
Yes. Because
Cho either got resined up somewhere else or is still unconscious.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick here.
All right.
We're at, according to Kindle, chapter 48, 84% through the book, and we're getting this scene.
Yep.
Bob, I think in the audio drama, this happens in the last 10 minutes.
That sounds about right.
So we're going to have to spoil a bit of the ending here, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The basic scene plays out the same way with Pietrowicz and Perkins waking up, cocooned in the xenomorph nest, and Cho also being there, also cocooned. But
I hated this whole thing so much, by the way.
He's got a face hugger attached. Cho's got a face hugger attached to himself, right?
Yeah, Cho, I believe, still does.
Yes.
Perkins and Piotrowicz did, but the face huggers on both of them have already fallen off by this point.
Right. Yes, and they're both awake and they're next to each other, right? And first of all, I think it's kind of sweet that Perkins is calling Petrowicz Petey.
She sure is, yes.
And Petey's telling her, like, look, we're already dead. We just have to wait for the rest of it because they've already been face hugged,
And, they're talking about how great friends they were and they're totally in love with each other. And they're like, maybe we could have hooked up at some point, but it probably was never in the cards for us.
Right.
And while all this is happening, Piotrowicz keeps being like, take off my belt. And Perkins is like, what?
It's like,
and
ooh, here, now?
Meanwhile, Perkins is discovered that she can move some of the fingers on one of her hands.
Right.
And so the two of them are talking and they keep on having this conversation about how they're, like I said, platonically in love with each other. And Petey is like, okay, look, these things are smart, but they're smart the way an animal is smart, not the way a person is smart. And Perkins is like, all right. I wasn't wondering, but okay, thanks, I guess. And he goes,
also, that's such a dumb guy thing to say.
and he goes, no, you don't get it. When they captured us, they think that just capturing us and locking us up is enough, as in they didn't take our weapons away. And she's like, yeah, but none of our hands are available at all, like to be able to use them. And he goes, not true. I have one grenade strapped to my belt. So use your free hand and undo my belt and grab the grenade when it falls off. And she goes, oh, okay. And so she's trying to work his belt off a little. They manage to get it off and the grenade falls into her hand, and they have to, because they're right next to each other, they have to kind of squeeze the outside of their thighs together on the ring of the grenade to pull it off. And then when they finally do, she lets it drop, and then they're both like, we love each other, as the grenade goes off and kills everyone in there.
A couple of things I want to highlight here. Perkins says, Petey, I don't care if it's the end of the fucking universe. I'm not taking off your pants. Just an important line from this novel. Should have been on the back cover, honestly.
I don't know that I would describe it as important, but you mentioning it now gives it a heft that it may not have had otherwise.
Agree to disagree. But yeah, he's like, come on, if I wiggle over here enough, you can pull the pin, and then I just got to wiggle my ass more, and kaboom, right?
And then she's like, well, if the grenade isn't enough to blow up the whole room, and he's like, well, my backpack is full of demolition charges, and she's like, oh, well, that's enough to kill these aliens, but what about if they get to the surface? And he's like, well, you forgot that we're on level 3. And because it's level 3, this is where they keep the nuclear fucking detonators or whatever.
Hey, man, you ever gotten to level 3 with a girl? Come on.
That is not how it happens in the novel. What happens in the novel is she's holding the grenade, and before they pull the pin, she's like, how do we even, isn't this just a regular grenade? How do we know this is going to be strong enough to detonate everything around? And he basically says, you've known me for how long? When have I ever done anything with a level of force other than excessive? And she's like, good point. And that's when they pull the ring on the grenade and she drops it.
Yeah, I forgot you are a problem. The way they handle in the audio drama, it's done in the way that movies aimed at dumb people do it, where they explain something and you in your head go, but what about, and then the next line is they explain that part. Okay. And then you go and you have another question about it, and then they explain that part. So it just keeps building like that. They do end up blowing up the grenade, and prior to all this is when he and Petey is like, oh, I just had a thought, but I couldn't remember what it was. Meanwhile, in Rollins's office, Decker is saying he's implanting the thoughts into his head of blowing up everything.
Yep. So in the audio drama, Andrea never launches the nukes.
Yes.
It is Decker implanting these thoughts into Petey's mind that make him think of the grenade, and the grenade blows up, and that's allegedly what destroys the hive. the whole thing, because in the audio drama there aren't 7 hives or whatever there are in the book. There's just the one.
Well,
I got you.
the two.
There's the 2. There's the one with the new queen, and then there's the big one that Petey
that they bring out of hibernation. Also in that it's not really an interrogation, but when they're on the ship with Decker and Rollins, and he's like, the jig is up, Rollins. I know what's going on here. I can't read you like I can read everyone else. You're a synth.
Ooh.
And Rollins is basically like, does it matter if I am or not?
Yes.
So that's kind of, doesn't really confirm or deny, but I guess it pretty much confirms that she is a synth like we thought.
Did we predict that she might be earlier in one of these episodes?
There was a lot of hints towards it in the either first or second episode we did.
Yeah.
There was like a lot of like heavy implications that she was probably, because they constantly reference how like cold and goal oriented she is, and it's like, oh well, she's definitely a robot.
Yeah, in the book, that shit never fucking happens. There is no revelation or even a discussion towards revealing that she's a synth. She's always just like a cold-hearted bitch for the entire book. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, it's never addressed or even implied. Like, at no point does anyone even say, could she be a synth? Like, no one ever even has that thought, much less is it actually discussed in the narrative of the story.
That was a Jet song, right?
I have no idea. I wouldn't know.
I don't know. You're gonna be my synth.
All right. That's all I got.
Okay, cool.
I said 1, 2, 3.
But yeah, like I said, this grenade goes off and it kills who was it? Perkins and Petey, and also maybe Cho, but I'm not sure because the narrative never says. Mm-hmm. And also that random guy who was coughing up a chest burster this entire time probably also got killed, but that was also never really addressed. So somewhere between 2 and 4 people get killed by this grenade.
Versus the audio drama where everything explodes because of this one grenade. And I guess the pack of munitions on his back, but whatever. Either way, it's fucking stupid.
Then it cuts to Decker and Manning and them, and they have killed all of the xenomorphs that attacked them after they killed the queen. But they finally piece together that Adams is fucked and there isn't anything they can really do about it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, important notes here. Maybe you're not here yet, so I'm sorry if I'm getting ahead of you. We learn that the face hugger so Elway is the other guy who got face hugged, right?
Yes.
And he's just got a standard issue face hugger on him.
I had not gotten there yet, but yes.
Well, we're there.
This is correct.
We're doing it.
Yeah, we're pretty much there, so yeah, it's fine.
The one on Adams, though, was larger and more elaborate with webbing between the front and rear legs.
It's a royal facehugger, folks. They also confirm in the final chapter of the novel that it is a facehugger that is capable of depositing more than one embryo into people.
Yes, and it looks a little different than how the royal facehugger was depicted in Alien 3, according to the Xenopedia trivia, but I don't know.
I mean, they made it clear that it was a royal facehugger, so it's fine.
They made it clear that it was, at least different. And then at the end, they confirm what you're just saying, of course.
And so it's Decker, Manning. There's a guy named Mueller. There is Silent Dave. Mm-hmm. Who I believe has the last name Llewellyn. So I think Silent Dave and Llewellyn are the same person, but I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure that's correct.
And Decker is carrying Adams and Manning is carrying Elway. Yeah. And they're the 4 or 6, depending on whether you want to count the facehug people. Those are the group of people that are currently alive with this group right now.
Elway and Silent Dave strike back. Am I right?
That you are exactly correct. Yes. Okay. Then we cut to our boy Willis, who we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah.
Actually, have we seen him yet in this section of the book?
Yeah, he was with Cho's group when.
Oh, yeah, that's
and
right. Yep.
He's the one who escaped in that doorway that was like so old.
He ran off in a hidden doorway. Yeah.
Is someone, hold on. One thing I wrote down in my notes that really pissed me off.
Yes.
I think it was someone in Cho's group said this in the audio drama that the xenomorphs have been going up to the surface at night through the tubes and coming out at night under the veil of darkness, basically.
Yeah.
To like explore or whatever, and that made me so mad.
Mean, that actively does happen in the book a few times. Like when Luke Rand got killed earlier, it's because xenomorphs came up through the sands, or more specifically, the silicon tunnels in the sands, and attacked him when he was on the surface.
In the Sea of Sorrows, if you will.
But what made me mad was that they, in the audio drama, they talk about that as they do it at night when they can safely come out. But it's like
canonically they mostly come out at night, mostly.
I guess so.
Yeah, they generally tend to operate under the cover of darkness. Like, I'm not saying it's weird that you thought this was weird. I just didn't notice this when you did because it didn't strike me as strange, is all.
They just seem like they're unstoppable killing machines, and whether it's night or day doesn't seem like it needs to matter. Really.
Yeah, I get you. The only counterpoint I have to that is every time we've seen that happen in the novel, it's been like 1 to 2 of them, not a whole bunch.
Okay, so true.
And we've seen that other people have been snatched and resined up in these different hives. So maybe they are just like small, like snatch and grab parties that have been popping up. Mm-hmm. But I don't think the book really elaborates on like how often that's been or how successful it's been.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't really go into that aspect really at all.
Right. We've only seen it in like limited capacity when like Rand or the security guard or when the pilot, whose name escapes me because it also starts with a P, Pritchett, yeah, like saw that same sort of thing happening, just like these small groups, right? It seems silly because it seems like this is an unarmed mining colony for the most part, that they could just like run up there and grab a whole bunch of people instead of having to send these little parties. And
it usually is the case where like one facehugger leads to the downfall of the entire ship or colony or what have you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't line up with them not really knowing what's going on.
Yeah,
but yeah, like I was saying,
this dude's just crawling upstairs though.
It's Willis. We cut back to Willis, and because, as the narrative specifically points out, he's a really big fat guy that's insanely out of shape. He is having a real rough time climbing the stairwell because he has to climb the entire stairwell all the way to the top because he's like goes up one floor of the stairs and then tries the door and it's locked. Or it's welded shut, or he's not able to get it open. At one point, they're like, he put his shoulder into it, and all he got was a bruised shoulder. And I was like, all right, cool. And so he's trudging his way up, and he's like turning red, and he's sweating. And I was going to make my designation at the beginning of this episode, guy who's about to have a heart attack because of this scene, but I changed it to something else at the last minute. And yeah, he's like looking real bad because he has to climb these stairs all the way up to level 1, and he started off on like level 8 or something like that.
Yeah, man.
And then suddenly Rollins calls him and harangues him for a while about how slow he's being and to like make sure he has all of his samples. And then suddenly he like slaps his forehead and he's like, oh yeah, the samples. I would have forgotten to get them out of my office if you hadn't said anything. And she's like, oh, they're in your office? And he goes, oh yeah, they're locked up in the safe in my office. And she goes, excellent. We'll see you when you get here. Click. And then she immediately calls up Pritchett, who at this point had already landed on the surface outside the mine and is just waiting for everyone to show up. And she's all like, all right, Pritchett, look, here's the deal. All right, I just got a call from Willis. He just said that the samples are in his safe in his office. we don't need to wait for his fat ass to show up. I'm sending you to go into his office and steal those samples because the samples are all we need. We don't need him. We can let him die for all we care. And Pritchett's like, you got it, boss. Mm-hmm. And then locks down the ship to head out to Willis's office to retrieve the samples from his safe.
I read him as being sarcastic to her of like, oh, darn, I would have forgotten those. Thanks for the reminder, because he knew that they were in his safe, right? He had told her that. Yeah. The other thing is like he's climbed to level 2. He can't open the door to level 2 because it was welded shut by Manning and Decker and that whole crew.
Yeah, they earlier on in one of the scenes after they left level 2 and went up to level 1, they welded the door shut behind them. Yes.
So that leads me to understand that these levels are humongous because he's at level 2 and he catches up with them not long after they've reached level 1, and he had time to like sit and have this conversation with Rollins, who was about to call Adams because there's too many names in this thing. So these must be gigantic levels. So to imagine this guy climbing, I think he got to like level 6, I think, before he was like, I can't fucking walk anymore. And he's tried like all of these doors on his way up. Like these must be gigantic.
He keeps trying the doors every level he goes up. And then after he tried like 3 or 4 doors in a row that aren't going to work, he's like, I'm assuming the rest of them aren't going to open and that I'm going to have to fucking go all the way up to level 1 on these fucking things.
He's climbing the stairs because he's like, I got to get up to another level that the lifts haven't been damaged and just find a way over to the service lifts or whatever.
And every time he tries to get into the level, the door won't open for some reason or another. And he's like, I'm just trying to get to the fucking elevator, guys.
Yeah. And then we get as you said, the whole part where Rollins talks to Pritchett and says, go get those samples. And he's like, yes, ma'am. And then, and then we cut back. There's a very brief chapter again where we cut back to Decker and he starts getting psychically hate waved again. And we also find out that the xenomorphs have already situated and started growing a new hive and a new queen somewhere else in the facility. Yeah, they took all the eggs out of this one that was just, blown up by Decker and Manning and crew. And they didn't chase Decker because they're like, we got to get the breeders, we got to get the eggs down someplace safe because we need to make sure the colony survives. And this is where we learned that there are 7 remaining nests. They've destroyed 1, and then I guess Perkins and Petey have destroyed a second one. So there was like 9 of these things total.
So presumably, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of nests, guys.
And then we cut back to one of those said nests. And as I even wrote in my notes, as is relatively common for this book, I decided to RIP someone in my notes earlier, and then turns out they got cocooned instead of killed. Right. So then I correct myself just in time for them to actually for real die. Anyway, that happens to Luke Rand this time.
This is where we get to find out that the xenomorphs are vomiting gray black goo all over his body.
Yep. Yeah, because we wake up with him, or we catch up to him, and he's not actually resined yet. He's being dragged through the tunnels by xenomorphs, and then a xenomorph slaps him up on the wall, and then another one goes and pins him to the wall and sticks him with resin, and he's like, ack.
Somebody isolate that puking noise from Kenny.
I mean, I can do it again clean if you want me to.
I think we got it. I'll put it on the soundboard.
Cool. But yeah, anyway, actual RIP to Luke Rand, the extremely guilty guy.
Again, I think he was relatively absent from the audio drama.
Yes.
So much so that I don't remember his fucking name, and I kept mixing him up with Willis in my head.
I think he appears a total of 3 times in this entire book, so I'm not surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised if he and Willis were the same character at the beginning, but he split them up so he could tell, like, we could see him getting his just desserts from being, cocooned up, but also the unfortunate fate of Tom Willis that's coming up shortly.
But before that happens, we cut back to Manning and Co., who, again, to remind you, is Deckard, Manning, Mueller, and the face-hugged Elway and Adams. Oh, and Silent Dave. That's right.
Sure.
They're discussing what to do now that they're on level 1, which, as I mentioned earlier, does not mean they're out. They still have 1 floor to go because they still have to go up to ground floor.
Right.
And they're discussing what they're going to do and how they're going to proceed when they hear something shambling up the stairs. And I think it's Silent Dave that goes over to check. And then he looks down and you see an almost dead Willis crawling his way up the stairs, like he's so close to having an insane heart attack that he literally can't even walk, like he's beat red and he's crawling up the stairs on his hands and knees.
Tom and Silent Dave strike back. Am I right, guys?
I thought you already said that, but maybe you didn't.
I probably did. Thank you.
Anyway, while they're interrogating Willis, he accidentally lets slip that he has a direct communication line to Rollins, and Manning is like, "Oh, I'm so gonna fucking kill you when we're done with this." They set out again. They're on the first floor. They find an elevator to take them up to ground level. And then when they get there, Willis is like, I need to retrieve some files from my office. So if you'll excuse me.
Left my wallet in my office. I kind of, you know how much of a hassle it is to get a driver's license reissued. I got to go to my office guy.
I believe his literal exact line is, I need to retrieve some documents from my office. Sorry. Yeah, I need to retrieve some documents from my office, as he adjusts his big glasses.
Was that Kenny just doing Kenny's voice?
Yes, that was me doing a me impression. That's correct.
I had to go return some videotapes.
That's right.
I need to retrieve some documents from my office.
There we go. He splits off from the rest of the group, and like they just let him go by himself. They don't even send anyone with him, which is relevant for what's about to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
They finally actually make it outside of the mine, which is hilarious because we still have 4.5 chapters to go of the book.
This is so wild because the audio drama, this happens in the audio drama way earlier. They get on the ship and have their confrontation with Rollins at the same time that the Cho party is getting the grenade situation set up.
In the novel, they don't even make it to the ship for another 2 chapters from now.
That's wild.
So yeah, they make it outside, and then the moment they step outside, as I wrote in my notes, Decker's hate ray keeps sending him increasingly pushy notifications. Like, as he makes it closer and closer to the ship, he keeps getting barraged by even more strong, like, empathy hate rays from these things.
So basically, he's getting Discord notifications.
That is correct, yes. And then it cuts to Pritchett, who's in Willis's office, breaking into the guy's safe. And when he does, he stands up and Willis is standing there in the doorway and he's like, pip, pip, cheerio, hand me that stuff over, please. And Pritchett's like, absolutely not. And Willis is like, how about you do, though? And Pritchett's like, how about I don't? And then threatens him. Yeah. And so Willis punches him in the head, and then they start to fight each other.
I like that a couple chapters ago we got like a deep, detailed description of how out of weight or out of shape Willis is. Yeah. And then in this one, they're like, he's a big guy. He can handle himself in a fight.
Well, to be fair, the fight is Willis is standing next to the doorway and he's like, okay, fine, you win. And as Pritchett walks through, Willis punches him in the side of the head as hard as he can and then kind of lunges towards the desk. And Pritchett immediately comes to his senses and turns around and kicks Willis in the leg so hard it actually averts his trajectory and he slams against the wall. And then Willis basically is like standing there cowering, and Pritchett goes, all right, you know what, fuck this, and pulls out his gun and is like about to just shoot him in the face when Willis is like, okay, man, fine, you can have it, I guess, whatever, let's just go. And then a very hilariously blunt Deus Ex Machina happens right here when the two of them start to walk out from the office, and Pritchett insists Willett goes first so Willis doesn't attack him again. And then when Willis comes out of the office, a xenomorph jumps into frame out of nowhere, slashes Willis's stomach open so that all of his organs come out, and then the xenomorph jumps away out of frame and we never see him again.
Wee!
So yeah, he just gets Deus Ex Machina killed by a xenomorph, and Pritchett's like, fine by me, and just scoops up the stuff and hauls ass over towards the ship.
First of all, just a lot of karate out of Pritchett just for a second there, which I'm a big fan of. If anything, this book needed more karate. But the
do martial arts on the xenomorphs, karate chop them so hard their heads crack open.
Please. But the samples,
Bruce Lee v xenomorphs, dude.
Ooh, I'd watch it, but I watch a lot of garbage. The samples he's collecting are samples specifically of like the cave walls and the bioship, like the Drukathi bioship from that we haven't spent a lot of time on or talking about.
Yeah, that's a good point. The samples are of the Drukathi stuff, not of xenomorph stuff. That is a good thing to point out.
Yeah.
I did forget to mention that. Glad you pointed that out.
Totally absent from the audio drama also.
All right.
I mean, also the aliens are never named in this as the Drukathi. That's a name that came later from the Rage War trilogy.
Yes.
But it is like these samples will apparently play a part in the background of the Rage War trilogy.
The Wage Roar trilogy.
The Wage War is what happened after Weyland-Yutani was bought out by Walmart.
That's right.
Hey, sounds like what's happening right now with freaking inflation. Am I right?
I hear you. Got him.
Do you mean Biden-inflation? Okay.
Whoa.
All right.
All right. It's not that kind of show, Neil.
I mean, it could be.
Look, man, I can't help it. Sometimes I just get worked up. Anyway, yeah. Tom Willis got eaten by a xenomorph.
He sure did. He got the fuck killed out of him.
Actually, he didn't. I'm just seeing a note I highlighted where Pritchett reacted by instinct. One shot through Willis's skull, and then he moved for the door. Pritchett put the xenomorph down with 4 shots to his chest, I think. And then Willis was like laying there, like dying and bleeding. And
so it did. I must have accidentally missed that when I was reading it last night. I thought the xenomorph just ran away after it killed him. Huh?
I mean, a safe assumption that the xenomorph would have killed him, but
okay.
He blew it apart.
I must have accidentally skipped that sentence when I was scanning it or something.
Because its guts splashed over Willis. Which is gnarly to think about, just like a bunch of acid xenomorph guts landing on you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, a moment of sympathy maybe where he puts a shot through Willis's skull to put him out of his misery.
I would say I will not be giving him a moment of sympathy if that's what you were. If you were about to ask us to give him one, I was going to be like, absolutely not.
No, but I think I like this Pritchett guy. He seems pretty on the level.
The other group, Manning and them, make it to the ship, and they're like, oh no, it's locked down, which is a problem because right as that's happening, they turn around and like the Sea of Sorrows is right there, and then like the tubes of silicon start opening up and Xenos just start swarming out of them.
Yeah, there's something here I didn't understand. Because this is Decker being like, oh, of course, the damned silicon, right? It says he thought that they were just like the Sea of Sorrows was just deposits of silicon, you know.
I also did not know what that meant, and I just went, all right, whatever. I'm just going to keep moving. I'm not really going to worry about it. But yeah, I also didn't know what this was supposed to mean or what information we were supposed to take out of it.
He acts like it suddenly makes sense. Of course, it's the xenomorphs. I don't get it. Is it just this is just like waste, like xenomorph silicon waste or something?
Yeah, I don't know.
It tries to imply that the Sea of Sorrows was like a planned strategic thing of the xenomorphs, maybe. There's something here I'm not understanding in any case.
Yeah, it definitely feels like we missed something or they forgot to completely spell something out here. But anyway.
Mother at crewexpendable.net, or,
That's
just
right.
hit those YouTube comments. We don't get enough of those.
Pritchett manages to show up, and the group and him team up and kill the horde by, as I wrote in my notes, going Decker mode with the plasma rifle.
Going Deckard mode. Yeah, he's hunting down skin jobs.
And then after that, Pritchett unlocks the ship and they all pile into the drop ship. And then suddenly out of nowhere, another Xeno comes out of nowhere and swipes Pritchett and kills him.
Good timing.
Yeah.
For this thing to just get on board.
And so everyone, like the scene earlier in the book where everyone was compacted into a really like small, tight tunnel, and there was a xenomorph on one end just slicing and dicing his way through, and everyone in the front is trying to shoot the xenomorph, but they just keep hitting soldiers farther on in the line. Something vaguely similar to that happens here because they're all in like the open area, like the open back of the drop ship, but the xenomorph is on one side and is trying to come through and get directly to Decker, who's on the other side, and everyone keeps getting knocked out of the way by the xenomorph until Manning goes, "Everyone hit the deck," and then pulls out this big can and sprays the xenomorph with it, and the can is that like quick hardening foam that they talked about once earlier on in the book.
Did you guys did either of you remember the foamers?
I did after he started using it, but I had completely forgotten about them until they actually said what it was.
They make often reference it in the audio drama.
Yes, I think that they are mentioned more in the audio drama, which I listened to today. I last night finishing off this reading, I was like, oh, that's right, foamers. Why didn't they have those with them this entire time?
Yeah, who knows?
Maybe they did. Maybe they got blown up in an earlier, conflict with the xenomorphs. But I was thinking like, damn, these would have come in handy so many times. Like they could have foamed up the hole of the tube that they climbed out of, because at one point, xenomorphs were just pouring out of that hole, that plasma hole that Manning made, right? Maybe they could have used these to like seal off doorways or something. They just got completely forgotten about until the end.
Well, it's not interesting to read about.
It's okay. You're actually kind of right about that.
But yeah, like I said, he uses one of these foam canisters to basically freeze the Xeno in place, and then pulls out that big cattle prod and hits it until he's like moderately sure it's at least unconscious. And then they start to cart it away, and that's when Decker finds out that they're locking it up rather than killing it, and he starts straight up having a fucking meltdown, and he pulls out a gun, and he's like, we can't let any of these, like he starts going Silas mode from when Silas blew up the lift earlier, and he pulls out a gun, and he's like, we can't let any of these fuckers escape, and he like points it at Elway's face, who, if you recall, is one of the two face hug people. And then right before he's about to pull, or right as he pulls the trigger, he realizes, oh no, there aren't any bullets. And then he looks up directly into Manning's fist, punching him in the face and knocking him out.
Another difference between this and the audio drama, because Bob, if I remember correctly, he tries this, and then Manning and whoever, Silent Dave or whoever else is the survivor, just like, hey man, these aren't loaded, you can't kill anybody. And he's like, oh shucks. And that's kind of,
then they put him in cuffs.
Yeah
It's very uneventful, I guess.
it is. This was built up a lot. Like I was really kind of feeling for Decker in the novel, where he was like, I have this overwhelming fear, these things are going to come after me, they're going to come after my kids, I have to fucking stop this now, And that stuff is touched on in the audio drama, but it's not nearly as tense or as, effective.
Yep.
Yeah, in this one, he goes to shoot Elway, and then click, click, oh no, and then Manning beats the fuck out of him.
Yeah.
And then next time we see him, he is, clasped up in irons, but we don't actually see them put the cuffs on him. We cut to Rollins, who's waiting on the Kiangya, because as far as I know, I think she never left that ship.
Yeah.
And she's waiting as the drop ship unloads everything. Adams and Elway get carted off and put into hypersleep, and then Manning and Rollins walk off, and she's like, let's have a conversation. And they talk for a little while about what happened and how harrowing the mission was. And she's like, do you have in your professional recommendation any suggestion about what we should do? And he immediately goes, yeah, nuke the whole fucking place. Destroy it all.
Yeah.
It does not deserve to exist. And she goes, very well, and presses a button, and then a whole bunch of nukes fire out of the Kiangya and then just decimate, not even decimate, totally annihilate the entire mine. They say that anything within 20,000 feet of the explosion point gets rendered to ash.
Including below the surface, right?
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. This was she was like way ahead of you because she had already had the captain of the Kiangya
load up the nukes.
Prepare the nukes. I think also in the
so
drama,
she knew that's what he was going to suggest. Yeah.
They call it the Kayanga or something like that. I think we've been pronouncing it wrong the whole time, but who cares?
I thought it had a Y in it, but I don't know. I'm not looking at it right now.
I'm probably pronouncing it wrong now. That happens a lot to me when I read these books. Especially when I try to read the names of the comic book creators. Jesus. Never been so embarrassed. But yeah, no, they nuke the site. That's it. Yep. Boom.
They do. It's just completely annihilated. And the mine at New Galveston simply doesn't exist anymore.
Yes. In the audio drama, that plays out a little bit differently, doesn't it?
Everything's so out of order. What do you mean?
So I can help you out here. No worries. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. In the audio drama, Decker is there and Rollins is saying like, I know we got these samples. I know we got these, the xenomorph. We got the face huggers. We got 2 of them. We got the data samples from the city. But I don't know that I really want to wipe this whole place out. I think it's better to just leave it alone in case we got to come back here and get more samples. And she doesn't want to nuke the place. She doesn't want to light it up at all. And that's when Decker like pushes the thought down to
mind control. Yeah.
He like mind controls Petey to like pull the grenade and blow up the hive.
The ending, it goes so fast. Yeah, because after they blow it up, they're basically like, all right, well, we've got our samples. We've got people frozen in cryo. The people who were face hugged. Yeah. They're frozen in cryo. We'll figure out how to get the embryos out.
Mm-hmm. Mission accomplished. Right.
Mission accomplished, and then it basically ends there.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't quite end there because it ends with, I think Manning or one of the other mercenaries and Decker being like, "Hey, let's go grab a drink. Everything's cool. We're buddies now."
Oh yeah.
Hey man, I know we captured you and like brought you in on this mission against your will, and basically you were forced into doing all of these things to like protect your kids' lives. But like we're cool now, right? Like I know you tried to destroy our samples on the drop ship, but like it's cool, buddy. Let's go get a really expensive beer because everything's expensive in space. And he's like, "You got it, pal." And that's the end of the fucking audio drama.
Yeah, very unsatisfying ending. Mm-hmm. Just like for the pacing of everything prior to that, it seems like they maybe were up against a deadline and we're just like, all right, just this is all we can do. We'll wrap up the last 8 chapters in like 5 minutes and we'll just be out.
Yeah, man. It was very different in the novel.
Yeah. The ending of the novel is completely different than that.
It is.
Like everything after the place gets nuked, literally nothing either of you said happens in the novel.
Basically.
After it gets nuked, Decker gets hauled in to get interrogated by Rollins. And
Yes.
She basically tells him, that was a pretty, she has all, the conversation starts off the same as the one she just had with Manning. She's like, pretty rough mission, huh? And he's like, shut the fuck up. And she goes, no, seriously, everything gets sucked, but let's be real. It went according to plan. You know what that means? Your debt is paid, or rather, Ripley's debt is paid. You're safe to not only you're safe to go back to Earth, but we're forcibly sending you back to Earth.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh. And then also, Neil, I'm mentioning this just for you because I figured you'd have something to say about this.
I know exactly what it's going to be.
That's why I put it in my notes specifically to mention it so that Neil can talk about it. During the conversation, there's a lot of talk about how he's like, the xenomorphs need to be wiped out. They can't exist. They're a plague on,
They're
space.
insatiable.
And Rollins is basically like, well, everything pretty much has been a plague on space at one point.
Yes.
No matter what you do to a virus, if you kill it, it always returns. And then she lists 3 made-up examples of diseases that they thought were completely eradicated, only to have them come back in a different colony in a completely other different part of space. And those 3 diseases she lists are Typhon's disorder, Arcturian clearhague, and the Lansdale plague. She doesn't say anything about any of them other than just the name, but the moment I saw one of them was called Arcturian something, I literally rolled my eyes and went, I'm sure Neil's gonna fucking have something to say about this. So I wrote in my notes to make sure to point it out so that you could talk about it.
I know diseases are terrible and these plagues spreading across worlds is awful, but it doesn't matter when it's Arcturian. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Can you elaborate, please?
I can't.
Okay.
Yeah, I highlighted the fuck out of the Arcturian Clairhaig.
Of course you. Like I said, I literally did roll my eyes and I was like, God, why did they have to fucking say it was Arcturian? Now we need to have a 5-minute discussion about this on the episode.
Hey, if you have any fan fiction about Arcturian poontang, mother@crewexpendable.net. Let's see it because I need to know what's going on.
But yeah.
Sorry, Bob, did that make you uncomfortable?
No, I'm deep in thought. I'm trying to picture it.
Yeah, like we discussed, Bob doesn't know about any of this stuff, so he's just listening like a fan would.
There also, I do want to say that Lansdale plague that was mentioned earlier as like the Lansdale incident, right? Was that
I don't remember that, but I may have just forgotten it.
I think it was the weenie who sold out Decker
Rand.
I think he was talking about how he was like involved, or maybe it was Willis who was like, I've been a part, like I went to another planet after this. I went to the Lansdale colony after something broke out, and by the time I got there, I was just in full.
Maybe I definitely don't remember that happening, but I may have just forgotten. I don't know.
I think it's a callback to something earlier in the book, but it wasn't important in any case.
But yeah, like I said, she tells him that his debt is paid. He's free to go, and they're sending him back to Earth. And then he falls asleep for a few hours. And then when he wakes up, they chain him again and then load him into a hypersleep pod. And then he falls asleep in the pod. So I don't know why they had him just fall asleep in the first place, the first time.
Worn out.
But anyway, while he's in the sleep pod and he the gas washes over him and he passes out and all that. The final chapter of the book, not counting the epilogue, Rollins sends yet another email, and she sends them to the same person she's been sending them, the same one that Neil sent an email to.
Let's see if I got a response back.
And this time the email is all about her celebrating not just their total victory, but how they got even more information out of it than they had originally expected or planned to. And so she just celebrates their, total unanimous victory over the events at hand. And then after sending the email, she goes into like the hypersleep chamber and then menacingly stands over Decker's pod and like stares at him while monologuing to herself about how crazy stuff has been. And then it cuts to Decker asleep, and he's having dreams of xenomorphs in his hypersleep dreams.
Yes.
And the end.
I do want to say, I was busy checking my email. We have no response from Lauren Bannister yet. He gets put in hypersleep next to Manning and, the other mercenary. And they're like, dude, we're going to fucking kill you if you try anything. Like, they're not buddies at the end of the book,
Yeah, I believe Manning's exact line is like, look, man, I understand why you did it, but next time you come after one of my guys, I'm putting you in the ground.
Yeah, I'm burying you on 7 planets, I think is what he says, or 7 systems.
And then Decker's just kind of like, should I act really hard to this guy and try to like weird him out? And then he eventually goes, nah. And then he just goes, yeah, that's cool. And they just climb into their hypersleep pod and then they're both asleep. And that's it.
So there were 35 mercenaries, I think, maybe including Decker, who went down on this mission, and a total of 5 return. 2 of them with facehuggers on them.
I forgot to mention that final email that Rollins sends, that's where we find out that the one on Adams is a royal facehugger.
Yes. We also learned that the xenomorph specimens are going somewhere else other than Earth, because Rollins is like, look, I'm not fucking stupid. We're not sending them back to Earth.
Yeah.
That's the end of the book.
That's it. That's how it ends.
Very different
the
ending.
Novel, anyway.
Than like the feel-good, high-fiving, hey, we're all pals ending of the audio drama. But interesting in both that Weyland-Yutani has walked away from this with a xenomorph, 2 facehuggers, and embryos. One of the facehuggers carrying multiple embryos.
Yeah, like I said, she says in the email that it is one of the most resounding successes they've ever had on a mission.
Mm-hmm. And biosamples of another alien species that they can like use to like for their bioweapons division to advance this idea of like growing technology and stuff.
Yeah, she says something to the effect of how if they just got away with the data, that would be enough. That would be enough like information to keep them busy for like almost a decade. But the data is just one fragment of everything they got away with.
Yes.
So Weyland-Yutani completely won and got off effectively scot-free and like came out of this way ahead further than they were in the first place. So cool.
Yeah, man. So just feel good, happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
I got a couple of notes that I took. I don't remember if this is in the novel, but it's definitely in the audio drama. There's a part where Silas is describing what he saw in the city, basically like the egg field, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he starts describing it as like seeing these objects that look like vases or urns and then realizing that they're eggs. And it just reminded me of this era in the franchise when everyone was scrambling to try to make Prometheus make sense to the universe. Because ovomorphs don't look like vases or urns. They look like eggs.
That's very true, yes.
And there's another part, I think it's after Silas blows up the lift, whoever went to check on that, Perkins or I'm not sure who, where they see like in the wreckage with like body parts and, twisted metal and stuff, people who were trapped on or under the lift when it exploded. She sees like a puddle of black fluid and she hopes it's just oil. Right. Mm-hmm. And that felt like a shitty reference. Like at this point, there's only like 2 black fluids in the franchise, which is either oil or pathogen, or Mountain Dew Pitch Black, I think was at this time. It might have been that. But that just felt like a shitty, like shoehorned in reference to Prometheus also. Like, oh, there's this black liquid substance on here. Oh, I hope that's oil, Yeah,
and just to put it in context for the listeners, this novel came out in 2014, which means Prometheus was out, but Covenant doesn't come out until 2017.
Yeah.
So only Prometheus had been out by this point.
We also got some references in the audio drama. This was completely absent from the book. Kenny, correct me if I'm wrong, but I did a search to make sure I didn't miss it, where they find that med pod that was mentioned earlier. Again, I think, Bob, you brought it up because it was just in the audio drama. And where that character, somebody had been like vivisected inside it.
Yes.
And
that definitely does not happen in the book.
yeah, and we learned that it's a Seegson model med pod. Which is a reference to obviously all the computers in isolation and Out of the Shadows. And Rollins and an assistant on her ship. They get the data out of this thing. And we get a nice recap of Out of the Shadows because we learn it's the med pod that Ripley had been in prior to this other person. And we get like the full sort of recap and Rollins being like, Ripley was never reported to be on the mining ship, like this is weird.
Uh-huh.
That goes nowhere, but it was like clearly an attempt to tie this book or this audio drama closer to the Out of the Shadows story.
Yeah, which it really could have used, because this really does not feel like a sequel to Out of the Shadows. Like, it takes place in the same location,
Yeah.
but the plots are completely unrelated to each other. It's just two separate stories that happen to take place at the same place, separated by like 200 years or whatever.
Yeah, and this book is book 2 in this trilogy, right? It came out after Out of the Shadows, before River of Pain. I appreciate the audio drama trying to tie it more closely to Out of the Shadows, but it takes a little bit away. I think if you squint, Sea of Sorrows really can stand on its own.
For sure.
If you don't think about the fact that, like, it makes more sense to me for it to be tied to it, because we know Ellen Ripley in Out of the Shadows encountered this hive, or a previous version of this hive or whatever. And that's why all of these xenomorphs are so focused on Decker. That makes more sense to me than the idea that like all xenomorphs across the universe want to kill the descendant of Ellen Ripley.
Yeah, just like no Ellen now. Yeah.
But you could buy that if you needed to, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would have been like, that's kind of dumb, but it's fine, whatever.
Right. I mean,
that would have been as far as I would have ever thought about it.
Yeah. I mean, it is dumb. And I think it works better knowing that Ellen Ripley had encountered this particular colony. But again, it doesn't have to, I don't know. Those are the big notes I took on listening to the audio drama versus reading the book. The big changes, aside from the things you've already talked about with the ending and everything else. So just wanted to get those in. Bob, what did you think of this story?
I liked it for the most part. Knowing that I missed a lot of stuff that was there in the novel is kind of annoying, and I don't like how quickly it wrapped up things in the end.
Yeah.
Just seemed kind of like, oh, well, I guess everything worked out.
It was like they had a set amount of hours or minutes they could make this thing, and they got towards the end and they were like, oh shit.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It was a fun story, but the way it ended, I didn't love it.
Yeah.
I liked it during, but realizing how it ended was kind of like a letdown.
I think it's a nice companion to the novel, but I don't think it tells as good of a story as the book does. I think it's a fun, like, stuck at work listen, or, whatever, but I don't think it's the way to really hear this story overall.
Right.
Yeah. Kenny, what did you think of the book?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yes.
Okay. Are you still recording?
Yes.
Okay. Because my recording stopped a couple of minutes ago.
Okay.
It just says finished, and I'm not getting like a waveform anymore.
Damn.
So I don't know if you guys are actually recording me anymore.
It says that for me too.
It does to me, but I am recording on my Rodecaster. It's just not, not mixed. Cool. So I'm getting all of this anyway.
Okay. Can you ask your question again then, and we'll just cut that part out?
Kenny, what did you think of the book?
I thought the book was fine with a capital F. Like, it's fun. The action scenes are cool, but there's a big part of the like middle section of the book where it's just characters running around back and forth through nondescript tunnels that all kind of seem the same.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it's hard to follow. And then the final section of the book that we covered in this episode becomes equally hard to follow, but in a different way, because then it starts cutting between like, 4 or 5 different storylines anyway. So the book is kind of hard to follow sometimes, but generally speaking, I think the book is pretty fun. I don't know how much we needed another story about LV-178 or whatever the planet was named.
Right.
But like, I'm not going to complain that we went back to that place and got more of that story.
Sure.
My one big complaint is that even though it's kind of central to the narrative of the book, I do think it's kind of lame that Decker has psychic powers. I mean, I know there's like precedent for that, but like their explanation of like him being like a descendant of Ripley 8 always felt like kind of an ass pull where they were like, we want him to be able to psychically sense them. How do we explain that? I don't know. Let's say he's a descendant of Ripley 8. Sure. Fucking why not? Throw it in, you know?
Yeah.
But overall, I thought the book was pretty cool. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of parts that I'm kind of like about. But overall, the book wasn't bad. It was a pretty fun read. Like I said, I've read it twice now.
Sure.
And it's not awful. So, yeah, check it out.
I think out of the 3, the 3 books of this trilogy, Sea of Sorrows, Out of the Shadows, River of Pain, this is the one I was sleeping on the most. This is my favorite of the trilogy. As we've sort of gone back on the show and checked out the other 2, I think that the worst part of those is how hard they try to force themselves into continuity. And this one setting itself like way in the future away from all of that. Again, if you've read the other books in the trilogy, the Ripley connection makes more sense. The connection Decker has with the xenomorphs makes more sense, but as a standalone novel, I think it also works really well on its own, and I think it's doing more interesting things than like the way that it played, like the way that these are mercenaries, so they're not soldiers, so they've got some immoral stuff going on. Mm-hmm. The way that it played, like with Cho shooting Silas earlier, in the novel, I think that reminds us like, oh wait, these aren't like heroes that we should be cheering for.
These are not colonial Marines,
right?
Although some of them are former colonial Marines,
right? But that didn't work out for them, so now they're mercenaries.
Yeah.
This is a novel that I don't remember if I ever read it. I think I only listened to the audio drama, and having done both for this podcast, I really think that the book is the way to go. I mean, that's kind of a standing rule for me. I always am of the belief that the book is the way to go if there's more than one version of it. That is the story, and then the drama is just an adaptation of the story. Yes. But again, that's not me talking shit about the audio dramas. They're all 3 of them are very well produced, and I think they work really well together. But I think if you're really invested in this story, going with the book itself is the way to go. Mm-hmm. And this book was surprising. It took me places I wasn't expecting, and it was fun. It was just generally a fun read. So I say check it out. If it's stronger if you've read Out of the Shadows, you don't need to read River of Pain for it.
For sure.
It's it can stand on its own. It works better with a little bit more background. But don't let that stop you from checking it out if you want to. I think it's well written. I think the action is very well described.
Like, I'm honestly struggling to think of a single thing in Sea of Sorrows that you would have needed to read Out of the Shadows to make sense of.
Right.
Because like even in Sea of Sorrows, like when they come across like the Drukathi ship and all that, they explain again what all these things are. So you don't need to have even read Out of the Shadows to understand that.
Yes.
So it is a sequel to Out of the Shadows, kind of, but in all honesty, it is just a standalone story that happens to take place in the same location. So you can absolutely read it without reading out of the shadows, and everything you might not understand will get explained to you in the novel.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, again, I think it was out of the trilogy here, I think this was my favorite one, mostly because it didn't force itself into like in between other continuity, like existing continuity.
That makes sense. I will give it points for that. That is a good point that you make. Yes.
Anything else you want to say about Sea of Sorrows?
I don't think so.
Same here. I think we're good.
Cool.
And I fingered a guy that I really like. Just getting into character.
And respect.
All right. Before we go, guys, I have some music trivia related to not just Sea of Sorrows, but the entire Shadow trilogy. You guys, you're both big music guys, right? Kenny,
sure.
You're huge into music.
Yeah, I love it. I listen to it a lot, actually.
You were in a band, right?
I was. Technically, I still am because we never officially broke up. But yeah, I was in a band.
In that case, I'm also in a band because technically we didn't break up because we never formed because I am not a musician.
There you go. See, problem solved.
Yeah. And Bob, you do something with music, right?
I've heard it once in a while.
Sure. Well, yeah, on this episode, you talked about recording a lot of bands.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to it when I watch a TV show and it has like a theme song at the beginning. I like Nerf Herder.
Sure, who doesn't?
When they do the Buffy theme song.
More Buffy talk, hell yeah.
And you play the Alf theme song on your streams all the time.
Alf theme song, it goes crazy.
It does. It goes hard as hell, dog.
All right, so a couple of bona fide music lovers on this podcast, which is great because I have put this trivia in the form of a quiz.
Ooh.
Do you guys know that all three of these books, River of Pain and Sea of Sorrow, are all music references to songs or albums with their titles?
I did not know that.
What about you, Bob? Did you know that? Are
you going to ask me to name what they are?
The quiz is to name what they are, but I've got some hints for you.
Okay. Okay.
You know all the answers or none of them.
I know none of them. It sounds like I know it's not, but it sounds like Dio albums.
All right. Well, we'll just jump into this. And again, I don't expect either of you to get the answers to these. Mm-hmm. But hey, maybe with the clues I've got, you'll catch on. So let's start with the book we just finished, Sea of Sorrows. In 1991, the song Sea of Sorrow was recorded by what Seattle-based band which formed in 1987? Just buzz in with your name if you've got it.
87. Kenny. Soundgarden.
Nope, not Soundgarden. You got a guess, Bob?
Seattle-based. I'm gonna say fuck. No,
not fuck. No,
I don't know. How about is Green River from Seattle?
No idea. I didn't know this band was from Seattle, although it made sense after I found out.
It's not the Melvins, is it?
It's not the Melvins. Here, I'll give you guys a couple of hints. All right. A different song by this band was featured on the Last Action Hero soundtrack.
I've never seen Last Action Hero, so that doesn't really.
That doesn't mean you haven't heard the soundtrack.
I haven't, so sorry.
Okay.
Does this band appear on the Singles soundtrack?
I don't know. I don't have their full discography in front of me, but I can tell you they also appeared on the Street Fighter II, the animated movie soundtrack.
It's not Pearl Jam, is it?
It's not Pearl Jam. I got two clues for each of these bands. I'll give you one more for this one, though. A very famous song by this band was featured in Terminator Salvation.
Which one is Terminator Salvation?
The one with Christian Bale.
Yeah.
And Sam Worthington.
From like 2009 or whatever it was.
Seattle, 87, not Soundgarden, not Melvins. It's not Mudhoney.
It's not Mudhoney, no.
I'm trying to think of other bands from Seattle that aren't Nirvana. Well, technically Nirvana's not from Seattle, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Affiliated, if you will.
Yeah.
You guys give up?
Is the bands, are they active currently?
I think technically they might be on a hiatus, but
Has anyone in the band died?
I can't answer all of these questions. I am less of an expert on music than you two.
I don't know. I don't have any guesses. Bob, it's up
Alice
to you.
in Chains is from like L.A., right? They're not from...
No, they are not.
And also, they're not active because they are without a couple members from...
Oh, Alice in Chains is 100% still active. They released a new album like a year ago.
I mean, the dude man famously passed away.
He certainly did. That's correct.
This is really going to bother me. Do you have any other hints?
Yeah, you already said the band.
Is it Alice in Chains?
I believe, yes, it is Alice in Chains.
Is it Alice in Chains?
But there might be a problem. I'm checking over their discography right now because there was also a 1980s glam metal band, Alice in Chains.
I mean, that's also how Alice in Chains spells their name.
No, they spell it with the IN.
Oh, the fact that you put a space there led me to think that is what you were saying.
I wasn't saying Alice in Chains.
Hey, that might be what the glam metal band is called.
Yeah, but no, the answer is Alice in Chains, unless it's the other band, Alice in Chains. And you know what? We're going to move on because I'm not sorting through all of these discographies.
Cool.
That was the easy one, by the way.
Okay.
Wow, right. I was like dead set on Alice in Chains being from LA.
No, they're from Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, what tipped me off, Bob, is when you were like, aren't they from like LA? And Neil immediately goes, no, they are not. And I was like, oh, the answer's probably Alice in Chains then. Because he clearly does know where they're from.
Just get a quick double check here. Make sure I don't screw any of these other ones up. Nope, it is. Yeah, this is a song by Alice in Chains, I-N. Okay, so I did get it right.
Yeah,
all right.
Does it say which song was on the Salvation soundtrack?
Rooster is on the Terminator Salvation soundtrack.
Got it.
You know, the Alice in Chains song?
I do know that song, yes.
Yeah. All right. This next one is going to be a little bit harder. More recent album, though. This song is from the 1995 album Behind Closed Doors. Who is the English hard rock band behind the song River of Pain?
1995 Behind Closed Doors?
Are they like a 90s band, or is this like a later album from a band that was famous before that?
It looked like they were primarily active in the 90s.
Okay.
English hard rock band.
Yep.
Okay, so you saying hard rock is throwing me off.
The English hard rock band is straight from their Wikipedia page.
How would you describe them?
Not that hard, but maybe hard by English standards.
Because I feel like hard rock is usually something to describe bands from like the 70s, like the late 70s.
Right.
For sure.
So calling a 90s band hard rock, that means something very specific, and I don't know what it is.
So they were formed in 1989.
All right.
English. Space Hog.
Not Space Hog.
Fuck.
A 90s band. Which song was it that you said?
River of Pain.
River of Pain. Okay.
So it's not, they would have said, I feel like the Wikipedia would say if they were active into the 2000s, that hard rock would probably have evolved into nu metal, and the Wikipedia would say nu metal band.
Yeah, I would not call what I listen to by them nu metal in any way, shape, or form.
So I'm guessing this band did not last into the 2000s.
So in 2022, they took a hiatus, and they're back again. Apparently, might be a final reunion tour or something like that.
Bush.
Not Bush.
Ooh, that was a good guess, though.
That's a very good guess. I wouldn't even say they sound like Bush. So,
shit.
It's really throwing off the hard rock.
Sound like Bush, but it is hard rock.
I'll give you a hint. These are, I only have one. I'm going to give you both hints at once because neither of them are very helpful.
Oasis.
Not Oasis, but it might give you a sense of the band's sound.
Blur.
Not Blur. They have done covers of Give Me Shelter and Spencer Davis Group's Give Me Some Lovin'. That song made famous by Days of Thunder. That's why it's famous, right?
The movie Days of Thunder?
Yeah.
British hard rock band. Fuck, man. You're throwing me for a loop again.
Do you have any information on whether this album from 95 is like a particularly famous release of theirs?
Let me check here.
Like, was this what made them famous, or were they more famous either before or after it or something?
This was their third studio album. I don't think it was very popular.
Okay.
If this doesn't give it away, can you say how many words the name of the band is?
It is one word, and I have already said it while we've been talking about them.
Oh. So I guess the answer is not Chumbawamba then.
Not Chumbawamba.
90s and British. Hard rock.
He's really caught up on this hard rock thing.
That's so specific. They wouldn't say it if it didn't mean something.
Even on this album, Behind Closed Doors Wikipedia page, it is the third studio album by English hard rock band. Single word.
Ugh.
English. They were formed in the 80s? Formed in 89?
89, yeah.
And went on hiatus 2 years ago.
Yes. They also went on hiatus between 2000 and 2002. I think there was a lineup change.
I don't know.
Extremely detailed and long Wikipedia article for this band.
Do you like this band?
I had never heard of them before.
I've never heard of them.
This quiz. And no, I don't. Mostly I listen to the song River of Pain and their covers of Gimme Shelter and Gimme Some Lovin'. Again, a song I knew from the movie Days of Thunder.
All right.
So I'm guessing this is some kind of like throwback act if they're covering songs of yesterday. That's probably why they're called hard rock, because they're probably leaning into a late 70s aesthetic.
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate to me. You'd hear them on a classic rock station, if at all.
I genuinely have no idea.
All right. You give up, Bob?
I think so.
The song River of Pain off the album Behind Closed Doors was recorded by a band called Thunder.
Thunder?
I have never heard of those guys.
They are not even the top result for Thunder if you search in Spotify.
Okay.
Yeah, I've definitely never heard of them.
I had to put the song title in to find them. So, all right. Finally, Out of the Shadows is the title of a 1962 album by what instrumental band?
What year? 62?
1962, yes.
1962 and instrumental.
Is it like jazz or something similar to that?
Instrumental rock.
Oh, it is rock. Okay.
Yeah.
Out of the Shadows.
I'm gonna give you the first clue.
Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Nope, not Emerson, Lake and Palmer. This is the fifth most successful act on the UK singles chart behind Elvis Presley, the Beatles, Cliff Richard, and Madonna.
Pink Floyd.
Not Pink Floyd.
They wouldn't have been 62 either. They formed later than that. 62.
And they're not instrumental anyway.
No, I'm just thinking they have longer songs. I thought maybe they did an instrumental album.
Eventually they get bored and just start saying words.
62 instrumental.
Now, I'll say I'd never heard of this band, but I did hear of them when they went by their previous name, The Drifters.
That name is vaguely familiar.
It's familiar to me because my mom had their CD when I was growing up.
Nice.
So hold on. The Drifters was prior to 62.
Yes.
Is anyone of note in this group?
Does
anyone have a blue Wikipedia link for it?
Yes.
Their name?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 out of the 17 past member names are clickable.
Out of the Shadows.
Yeah. Do you want me to give you a couple other album names from this band? It might help out.
Sure.
Okay. Let me get to their discography.
They're English also, you said?
Yeah. British rock group. Again, instrumental. So we got Out of the Shadows, obviously. We've got Dances with the Shadows. We've got Shadow Music.
Oh, this is easy. It's the Shadows.
It is the Shadow.
I was literally about to say, are they called Shadow?
You would have been wrong, Kenny.
The Shadows.
Also a band I've never heard of.
So I found it interesting that the naming convention for these, it always seemed weird that Out of the Shadows didn't fit the Sea of Sorrows, River of Pain model, right?
Yeah.
So then I was reading the trivia. I was like, oh, they're all music references. Okay, well, that's cool. They all have something in common. But then Sea of Sorrows and River of Pain are named after songs, while Out of the Shadows is named after an album. So it's still the odd man out.
And it's like from way earlier than the other two
Yeah,
were.
it's also 30 years before the other ones. So anyway, just a fun piece of trivia.
Yeah, that was fun.
Guys, I didn't mean to out you as fake music fans.
That's fine. I don't mind.
But,
I would,
you know.
no way I would have gotten most of those, except for the Alice in Chains one. I should have known because I like Facelift.
So that I do have the correct Alice in Chains with that one.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
No, it's on the first record, but
I got real nervous. All right. Well, that's the music quiz.
Cool.
If you guys want to, pick on Kenny and Bob for not being good at music, twitch.tv/respectable street and CYHOBBEZ on PlayStation Network.
Has anyone added you from that?
Nope.
Well, if I had PSN, I'd add you.
That's fine.
Bob, thanks for hanging out and reading this book with us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tell everyone where they can find you one more time.
Flock Podcast. Work at mydadslawfirm.com, and I stream on Twitch at Respectable Street.
Hell
Friday
yeah.
nights.
Friday nights, guys. Go subscribe to Bob's Twitch. Go subscribe to the Flock Podcast.
I'm there pretty much every single Friday night when he's streaming.
I'm there sometimes.
Hell yeah.
Kenny, where can people find you on the internet if you want them to?
My handle is at CYHOBBEZ, and I'm on a few different places, most notably Twitter and Blue Sky. And there's one other one that I always forget to plug. And then also on my PSN, you can send me a friend request, and I'll probably accept it as long as I know who you are.
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, although I'm not logged in right now, at Final Neil with an A. Xbox. I'm on Xbox at that. Maybe we'll play some Fire Team. We'll see. Kenny, where can people find the show on the internet?
Our Twitter account is at Crew Expendapod. Our Blue Sky is at Crew Expendable. Our Instagram and our Threads are both at Crew Expendable Pod. Our YouTube is youtube.com/at Crew Expendable. Our website is crewexpendable.net, and our email address, as Neil, you mentioned earlier, is mother@crewexpendable.net.
Yeah, we'll be back next week with something. I don't know what.
Yeah, I have no idea. But something will be around. So, yeah, stay tuned.
Subscribe to the show. And until next time,
stay frosty.